Hey, Brian, how are you? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I think
Now you can hear me.
Maria, can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you.
Yes,
I'm Maria.
I can
Susan.
hear you.
No, Susan, you're not Susan, you're Maria.
No, we've all come in under
I
Susan's
can't
name
hear anybody.
because
What am I
she
doing
sent
wrong
us
here?
the link, and I thought it was
Okay.
like specific to people, but
You should be able to rename yourself.
okay.
All right, I think that's working now. You can hear Maria taking her aspirin. I tweaked that map a little bit, Maria, so it's got a little bit more vertical exaggeration. You can see that bowl a little bit better in the park.
Great.
Probably have to send you a new link.
Brian said that you can rename yourself. I don't know if you heard that.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you're Susan Marcus. Oh,
No, you're Susan Marcus.
I'm Susan Marcus. Yes.
I'm Paul Jordan.
Yeah. Hi.
How are you?
Fine. Thanks. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
This could mean that several people will come in as Susan Marcus. I was going to go look for the agenda, Brian.
What I do is I just call up the town website in a separate screen, and
Yeah. I could do that, but okay, agenda. Okay. Are we really planning to talk about Jay's database? Looks like it.
Just briefly,
Okay. Hello, Jay.
hello, Susan. How are we doing tonight?
Well, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good. Good.
It's 7 o'clock.
All right.
Big Brother's watching.
What it sounds like.
We don't have a quorum yet, do we?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well,
With losing one and gaining one, I think 6 gives us a quorum. Is that correct, Brian?
quorum is a simple majority of the active members of the board. So
That's Tom.
yes.
Tom's coming in, so
That's good.
Tom's
Wait
there,
a couple of minutes.
and Mark Levitt, who needs to get introduced, is there.
Yeah, yeah.
Brian, turn on your camera. please.
Oh, boy, we got all the big wigs coming in today.
Oh,
Jamie, you know, they told me when I joined the planning board that it was non-habit forming, but I don't know.
Jamie, I dragged him into this. I made him volunteer himself.
I have one call in. Is anybody expecting anybody as a participant that we don't already see?
well, maybe Will Green, he's not here, is he? So maybe Will.
Maria, are all yours besides Will here?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order. And I've got 7:02. Where you're already recording, so we're good there, right, Brian?
We're good to go.
Okay, let's do the roll call. Larry Fish here.
Jane Newsom here.
Susan Marcus here.
Tom Rutliff.
Henry Thayer here.
Joanne, you have to unmute.
Joanne Esposito here.
Brian Smith. Unmute yourself, please, and recognize that you're here.
Wonder why he doesn't hear us.
Well, he's probably doing something. He's away from the
Let me,
computer. or
hold
whatever.
on, let me. All right, no, doesn't seem to be anything I am controlling. Maybe he stepped away from his computer.
Maybe I'm gonna call him.
And we have a new member as well.
Right.
Right.
Mark,
Mark?
speak up and let yourself be known for the record.
Yep.
Yes, Mark Levitt.
All right, Mark, it's a history here that new members get to introduce themselves to the whole board. So you're on now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Now, do you want me to do a dance step or two, or what exactly is
Tell me a story.
You have to sing. You have to sing.
I get in too many troubles for telling stories. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to stay out late at night. I have two kids that are in the other room, and they went to bed early. They were so kind to let me go to a meeting. They have no idea why I'm here, but I'm here.
Brian? Oh, I'm sorry to bother you. Bye.
This is the economic development. This is where you do get the stock tips. Is that it here? They said.
You came to the wrong meeting for that one.
Buy GameStop.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. Mark, you can't vote on this one because you weren't at the last meeting. So did everybody look at the minutes? Any grammatical incorrections there, Susan, or
No, it's okay.
anybody else?
No,
Go ahead, Joanne.
So on the first page, old business, section A at the Saugatucket Design Project. Maybe I misunderstood a little bit where at the bottom it says, Mr. Zarneski encouraged the EDC to separate the River Development Project from the issue of the town's 300th birthday in 2023. And to contact the council to get them started on thinking about celebration events. I thought we were going to meet with the rec commission, which we did, and talk about how we were going to merge the project, and that we were still gonna do a letter, but that letter was gonna say that we're gonna work with the rec commission, not to drop that from our letter and just have that we're gonna put events together or something for the celebration. So maybe I misunderstood.
Now,
Well,
what,
I read, can I say something about that? I read that too, and I realized that's what Rob wanted us to do, so I felt it was correct to say it that way. But I don't know whether we really let him decide that for us. That's what he'd said, though, so I thought it was a correct assessment of the meeting.
it is correct. And we did not make a determination to drop that. So that's still part of everything. And we were gonna go to the rec and then come back here and go over the next steps. So you're both correct. And
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just,
Yeah.
that is exactly what I had recommended. And I actually am here tonight to encourage you to do just that again. I have spoken to the council president and they are eagerly awaiting your letter with regard to the 300th anniversary. They really do want to see the EDC get involved in helping to form a committee on the 300th anniversary.
Can we, in our letter though, mention how we would like to work with the rec commission on improving the Saugatucket River? And not just keeping that for the rec to do, or?
So my suggestion to you still, and I know you're still on your meeting minutes, but my recommendation would be to make them two different things. They are discrete. The one has to do with water quality and improving the quality of the downtown experience. The other has to do with the 300th anniversary of the town.
Well, except I'm not sure that the EDC would agree with you, Rob, because, I think we have a view which is slightly different, which is that while this project that we're talking about on the Saugatucket River is not exclusively around the 300-year anniversary, we want to use some of that celebration as a little bit of pressure and whatever to try and get some things done on the Saugatucket River. So even if we were to change the letter to say, we have some ideas about the 300th anniversary, it would include the Saugatucket River. I do believe, if I'm not, I mean, maybe I'm not speaking for the EDC, but I think that's what we have been talking about. So
All right,
I thought you could say that in the minutes, but I didn't know that we had agreed to that.
I don't know, I wouldn't represent that you had, but I would encourage you to do so again.
Okay,
right.
thank you.
I'm 7
I would-
minutes
I
into the
would-
meeting and I've lost control.
Well, why don't we just say that Rob encouraged it, however, the EDC wants to continue or something, saying that our letter.
It hadn't been decided.
It hadn't been decided, so I think we
That's
can
it.
just, we can just leave it the way it is in the minutes.
I think it's fine the way it is, but everybody's understanding and that's what happened and it's the intent. And since we're on the minutes, which usually take 2 minutes, I want to get moving. Anything else from the committee? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank God. Up to the minutes. I think this one's gonna be a tough one. Any correspondence, Brian?
Yes, as I circulated to the board members, Patricia Gardner has submitted a resignation. She noted that it was the end of her term and that she was not going to stand for reappointment due to conflicts with work hours and personal issues. So we will be looking for a new member to fill Patricia's slot.
So we just filled one spot and lost another, so we're still down one, is that correct?
I think we're
Or are we
down two.
I think we're down 2.
Okay, all right. Just wanted everybody to be on the same page.
And I would just like to say, maybe we don't need to fill either or both of them.
Explain.
Well, I mean, we're a big committee as it is. We're the biggest one in town, I think. And I don't know, I think we ought to be clear about what we're looking for in a fellow board member to fill in for some of our missing skills, and that won't be hard, but I don't know, it just seems to me like we don't necessarily, I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't, I'm just saying it would be possible to leave those 2 positions open.
I agree, Susan. We don't have to fill them, but if
Well-
there's somebody that wants to be on and we think that, or the council, it's not our decision.
It's not our
I think
decision,
that-
it's the council, so.
And
So if you think
that's their
the size of the
prerogative.
commi- if you think the size of the committee is wrong, you should make a recommendation to the council so that they don't fill it over your objections.
Well, I'm not sure anybody else agrees, but it just has occurred to me that 11 it's a pretty big board. It's a hard,
Well, I think a discussion about the size of the board would be outside of your agenda at this point. So unless we're gonna add it as an agenda item, I think what we ought to do is probably just add that as an agenda item to March's meeting. It gives you all a little bit of time to think about it. And if you do want to make a recommendation to the town council about maybe tightening up the membership a little bit, you're certainly free to vote on that at the next meeting.
I like that.
Yep.
Okay.
that's fine. This is, Rob, just as a point of order, this is the first time I got a new member assigned to the committee that not one council person asked anything about who we were looking for, nothing. And it's not Mark's fault. It was just, I found out about it in an email.
I think it is
from
Mark's fault. They
Brian.
know him well and they know he's a competent guy.
No, it's not that.
No, it's
just
not that.
that it's the first time. New council, I guess they doing new things. So I just thought that was interesting. Okay, now we can go into the business numbers. Mark, how I try to run a meeting is let everybody speak. Sometimes we go on in infinitum, but I want all voices to be heard because we have a total array of people on this from different angles, and I appreciate that. And so if you think I stifle you or anybody else thinks I stifle them, that's not my intent, and I just want to try to move the meeting along. All right, so chime in whenever.
I'm not shy. Thank you.
All right, Jay.
Well, I met with I was a guest at the SMART committee meeting. They waived all their rules about having certain type of people on the SMART committee, and they allowed me to talk to them for a couple of minutes. So
I'm not going to be.
I went back to the Secretary of State's office to my contact there and discovered that for some reason, God only knows why, a lot of the data was text rather than numbers. And when you have dates and entities and other things that should be numbers as text, then you can't sort them. So that was a problem with the data that I had. I played around with it a little bit more since I got that information. I think it's going to be easier to deal with now. And I would be happy to send an updated copy, which I will call Secretary of State January 2021, if anybody would like to have the corrected listing. I corrected it. She told me what the problem was, and I changed the text to numbers, and it should help a lot. And I intend to do some more work on it, but this week has been kind of busy, and I didn't get a chance to do too much. I got the information, I think, Monday from her, and they've been very cooperative up there. I can't say that enough. You know, the Secretary of State's office has been great. So that's pretty much it, Larry. I'll be brief, and that's it.
Jay,
Anybody-
if you want to send me that new data, I will make sure everybody gets it.
Okay,
That would be good.
Jay, I think Rob will love the data. And updating it like you have and reaching out, I think it's raw data, but I think we can get all kinds of information for the town, or the town can get all kinds of information from the different databases that you've researched. Thank you very much.
Well, one of the things the SMART committee said was that they wondered whether the EDC would take up the business of doing another survey, do the survey kind of thing every 5 years, or at some 10 years or some periodicity. So I just throw that out. Well, that's another thing we don't have to discuss tonight, but
No, but we need dollars because we used our money for that. I'd say our money, it's our committee's money that we generated
right,
through the regatta. And that's the only reason why that actually got done.
yeah.
So let me suggest that you come up with a budget and let us know what you need, because I do think that what Jay's got here is potentially very useful. The fact that you've got a 5-year-old survey, doing it again gives you a point of comparison, which is something we just do not have anywhere else in, the entire ecosystem of town government. We just don't have any business perceptions over time. So this is potentially a really big deal.
I agree. I don't want it to distract from the Saugatucket though right now. So, but I
Well,
think
we'd
we have to go to the council. The council needs, with the request for the funding and why and have the council approve doing that. And that's going to take some time. So that if we do ever get a meeting with the council, that could certainly be one of the items on the agenda.
Do you have in mind what the deliverable would be? I know it's.
deliverable. We would need, all we would need to budget really, unless we're going to pay our members for doing all the legwork, which I don't think we will, is the cost of doing the duplication at Staples and the mail outs. So that's it.
No, I meant the deliverable in terms of the data. When you crunch the data, what are we looking for?
Oh, we would probably this is what, Jay, I do think we should go back and look at the survey that we used before and see whether the survey needs any tweaking to be relevant. I mean, a question about COVID, for instance, or something. So, and then Tom, to your point, we had a bunch of ways in which that data was analyzed. So we had a report that we made, and we should look and see, what that looked like to
Right.
see whether that's what we'd want again this time. So,
To my way of thinking, I think we're going to have maybe more deliverables than we think in terms of different types of data. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if we do any changes, I don't think we should do any changes to the original survey. However, I do think it might be appropriate to add some additional questions, because we want to be able to compare the survey this time to the survey last time. Then any new questions that we add on maybe will be appropriate the next time, so that we can keep apples and apples together.
Okay,
That's
so-
exactly right.
yeah, that's
So-
good.
So
Could
Brian,
someone
I
tell
think
me-
you got another addition to the agenda for next time. Add
Could I
that
ask
on.
what's on the survey? I don't know about it.
Well, 5 years ago, or a little less, we did a survey to all the businesses in town. And with specific questions, and we got the answers, and then we collaborated, put all of them together, and really got a lot of information of what business owners in town were interested in. Were they interested in increasing density? Were they interested in a lot of different questions?
Wait, that's, I think, what we asked them was, we asked them questions about their business. How long had they been in town? What were their plans for the next 5 years? I mean, I haven't looked at it in 5 years, so I could
Right.
be wrong, but
Yeah,
Let me-
me
but,
too.
you know,
About their employees, if they
yeah,
live.
for their employees and,
Yeah.
yeah, and their relationship with the town. I think we asked them a lot of questions about their relationships with the town.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That was one of the key things we got out of it, where they were satisfied with town services and
Yeah.
town administration and where they weren't.
yes.
Right.
So,
So-
I
So
agree.
Larry,
We should be
what-
asking the same questions.
what is it you would like me to add for,
Just
Mark?
add the decision to, I guess it would be request I don't know whether we need a meeting with the council. I would think we'd want a work session or something with the council to go over the, whether that we've been asked to do this, do they want to fund it for this survey? But I think that letter is going to have more than that item on it, because I think it's going to probably have stuff about the Saugatucket or the 300th anniversary. I think now the letter might change, and I don't want to deflect from the Saugatucket.
So,
Yeah, I
Brian,
think I'd like to propose that we just hold off a little bit on that business data project until COVID settles down a little bit, so you're comparing a little bit more of a time frame that's normal. And we've got the anniversary coming up, and then the Saugatucket project is a lot, so just my thoughts. Just postponing it a little bit, like a year and a half.
Oh, I think that we shouldn't do that. I think, I think we need to get a picture now, soon, maybe within the next 6 to 8 months, before the end of this year, of how we're doing, how the town is doing. 2 years from now, that's a long time.
and
So
I don't think,
perception.
I don't think it's going to take very much time and attention from the committee, because I think we are going to use the same questions. We're going to decide whether we ask a question, an additional question about current situation. And then the analysis, maybe we just include in the budget, getting the URI guy to help us again with a little bit of the analysis of the data.
Mhm.
And I don't think it won't be as time intensive, labor intensive as it was last time, because Jay has already done so much of the work and the committee's done so much of the work in terms of deciding what those questions were. So,
So
So I
maybe,
would suggest this, Mr. Chairman, if the committee decides this is not something it wants to pursue for the next year and a half, that the committee just hand over what it's got so that we can do a survey, because I think that the follow-up survey really does have potential value. And we can figure another committee, perhaps a smart committee, perhaps town hall without a committee involvement. This would be a useful follow-up. The data comparison, the ability to do a comparison, a snapshot 5 years ago and today, is potentially quite useful.
I think it's very, very, very important to do it now, because the time sensitiveness of those businesses might not be in business in 6 months. And I think that maybe a question or two could be, how was the town's response to the COVID situation? How do you think they did? I really think that we need to do it. So, but maybe the agenda item could just be discussion about the doing the survey again. And then we can get into, maybe you can have the questions for the that were on it, given to all the committee members so that we can have it and we can work on it and agree in one night instead of, I think it was 6 months before we came up with the questions.
20 versions, 20 versions.
But to
Yeah, yeah.
Joanne's point, I mean, I don't want to distract the committee from what it thinks its highest priority should be. So again, you know, it's one team. If there's a need to shift this project, we can do that. I just want you to know that you don't have to feel like it's a, you know, go, no go. It's, you can go down the path you want to go down, and we can also figure out how to make sure that we follow up on this. I mean, I think this is worth following up. If-
Yeah, I think if your town staff can handle it, Rob, that'd be fabulous.
Yep, I think we could. I think we can do this. This is-
Yeah.
Since I wasn't there for the previous survey, how is this done? Is it a questionnaire that goes out? Do we actually face-to-face interview the businesses? So it's a survey that goes out. How many businesses ballpark?
We surveyed, the last time we sent out 1,100
Wow.
surveys. And I think we got back 700.
Yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
That's pretty substantial.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was really great data.
Yeah,
So
wow.
Well, so I think what we ought to talk about next time is we ought to get Jay and Henry to look back, to pull together, make sure we have the questions, know what it cost last time, know how many, you know all the answers to all these questions, and then we decide whether we pass it on to the town or we want to try and do it or whatever. But from
I
where we
think
are
that-
right now, we can't do that.
yeah, I agree. I mean, at some point, I'm willing to get an estimate on what I think we need to do the survey, except for having somebody do the tabulation of the data. But I wouldn't be opposed to turning it over to the town or to anybody else who wants to do it.
Right.
The
Maybe
one
we-
thing I would say is,
Again, yeah.
I
it's
don't
another-
know where the data is. I didn't get the data. I mean, I did, you know, I was the lead on this, but when we got the data, I think the data went to the town, and the
It-
town has it in a town repository somewhere. And I would suggest that be searched out, because I never got it. I don't have it. I mean, we viewed it. We know what the data was. I mean, we knew what the data was. We were able to view it, but the data itself,
Jay, do you remember who the staff you were working with?
Yes, it was Doug. It was Doug.
Yeah.
And I might have just gone through and thrown it out recently because I tried to clear some stuff out. But I did have it recently, and I bet we can find it. And I bet it's in the
Yeah.
town, it's in the town coffers as well.
I really don't think I
Maybe.
have it. I'll look for it too, but I've looked at those files quite a bit, and I didn't notice that, but I'll check.
Yeah.
I'll
so-
take a look because I had just come on board right when you were just getting the results and analyzing them, and that professor came in and
Right.
did
Yeah,
a,
Al Delabetta.
yeah.
Susan, I think we made a presentation to the council, right? We
Yes,
put
we
it
did.
into a document.
Yes.
So it should be
Town's records.
in the minutes of the council meeting.
Mm.
Well, it should be somewhere, but I just want to make it clear that I'm not sure. I'm fairly certain I don't have it, but it should be somewhere.
Mm.
Well,
It'd
I'll
be
look and see,
unfortunate if it wasn't.
I'll look and see whether I still have it too. I have a lot of stuff that I haven't.
Brian, can you check with IT and see if they can look through Doug's archived files and see if there's anything on the hard drives or in the cloud that have his name associated with it?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I can prowl through the network tomorrow and see what's lurking in there.
And check, in terms of dates, I think you want to check from October, November of 2015 to about, I'm going to say August of 2016. That should limit your search a little bit. I think that'll capture it.
I agree, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that does narrow things down a bit.
Great. Next
Okay,
item.
one other thing, Larry, if I might. I know the Department of Commerce, the Census Bureau, does do a survey of businesses just before the decennial census. I think there may be some stuff out on the website that it would be worthwhile to take a look and see what they have. You know, there may be some questions out there that we may want to add to our survey. Speaking of adding additional questions and how
Okay,
the
so-
data is formatted.
So I just found it. Can I share my screen? Does anybody want to see it?
Sure.
Good
Uh,
girl.
Well, I'm a pack rat, so I keep a lot of these things. So do I have permission to share? Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
No, I've got it. There it is. So this is, so
Ah,
just,
Susan.
just so you know, we have it. I'll send it to you, Brian.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Send it to
Susan,
me too, Susan.
do you
Say
have the raw data? Do you have the survey responses?
Yeah, probably, but I'm not going to look for that right now because
No,
this
that's
is the
okay.
meeting.
That's what we really need.
All right. Okay.
All right.
There might be an old email that Doug sent us that had raw data and the survey, you know, by Al. So maybe we can find that email.
All right. I believe the next item was the Old Tower Hill Road construction.
Yeah, just quickly, I talked to Rich. He had done a little digging into the question. The project is done. Rich did say that there was a short punch list of things that here and there that needed to be corrected, improved, completed. But I think the concern that was raised was whether or not the landscaping was complete. And Rich said, what you see in those traffic islands is, you know, what's supposed to be there. And we'll just all have to hope that it grows in and thrives, you know,
I
as
mean,
it gets a couple of growing seasons under its belt.
Okay, but what is in there? Is it just soil?
No, there are plants in there.
There's grass.
Okay.
Planted.
Ornamental grass.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I drive by it and I've forgotten to take note of it. When I last did, it looked empty, you know, just crushed stone and not filled with soil. So I'll check it out.
And now you'll see it's all white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out that all the soil erosion control rolled up burlap stuff is still just everywhere. If it's done, if the project is done, they haven't cleaned up after themselves.
It should be on the punch list.
Yeah.
I would hope, you know, and that's why I'm just letting you know, Brian. So if you talk to the powers that be over there, that's an ugly thing that we've had to deal with for, I don't know, 4 months since they finished. I don't know whether it needed to be there or not, but it's there. And I think the vendor would just leave it there and all the business owners would have to deal with it. I don't think that's right. Okay, nothing more. We go on to Saugatucket. I want to thank Maria for being here and bringing her cohorts. Randy, thank you for your volunteer efforts. And anybody that wants to contribute to this, we're all ears. It's not me, it's not this committee, it's going to be a collaborative effort.
Well, Larry, do you want to say something about what happened in the meeting with Parks and Rec?
Sure. The meeting went well. They wanted us to come back to them before they endorsed the project or take any responsibility with the project to come back with more of a concept for us to come up, not with the final design, but what we're looking to do and mold it a little more than it's molded right now, so that they knew exactly the extent. And that, I think, is the meat of this meeting tonight. We need to talk to some experts that we have here, see what they say. We're lay people. We don't know whether the students in that participated, they know a lot more than what we do. And they think that it should be able to treat the water. There's room enough. It's deep enough. It's in the right proximity for the engineering to be done. But we need to, before we go down the road too far, we got to make sure of that kind of stuff. And I think, Maria, you can go in from there, but
Well, wait a minute. Can I
Yeah,
add one more, can I add a couple more things about the meeting? They said they
Yeah,
were
a
going,
couple more.
okay, do you want to go first, Joanne?
Well, I just wanted to suggest, to add in that what they came away with is that it should be a collaborative effort where EDC, the rec department, the rec commission, planning committee, and probably someone from the town council, from the town planning department, and maybe in a couple other departments, but collaborate on what we should do with the river project, so that what they looked at, and they got a grant for 80,000, they would look at not only just doing the basketball court, the fence along the Saugatucket River where the Saris sanctuary is, coming down to the basketball court, and looking at the invasives, but they're realizing, after what we're looking at into the river quality, that we should, instead of putting money into a fence and then it's not going to be worthwhile in terms of sustainability and stormwater management, that we should collaborate and really come together with a project that is realistic for the future of the success of the river area and for the health of the river, so that the money isn't wasted, so that we spend it wisely. So I think maybe, Susan, if that's what you were going to make.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I just add one other thing, which is that at their next meeting, they agreed to appoint a couple of people who would join us in this next collaborative phase, so that I was very impressed. They were responsive about not proceeding yet with what they were planning to do until they had met with us some more and talked to us some more, so that we could understand whether their request needed to be altered in some ways in order to fit into a larger scheme. So they're supposed to, at their next meeting, they're supposed to elect a couple people who would start working on us to elaborate on the next phase.
I'm going to suggest that we get the town council to appoint a special committee for a period of time that would include members of the EDC, the planning department, and Parks and Recs, and let them function as a separate committee to get the job done. I think maybe it needs to be a little more formalized. It'll get more visibility that way, and I think be more efficient.
Maria had sent a webinar on parks and making communities more resilient and sustainable. And it specifically said, when you're looking at parks, and I shared this with Dave Palizzetti, and he was going to be looking at it and sharing with his crew. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to get onto that the other day. But the big thing that they're all working on is HPPS, High Performance Public Space. So just kind of like what we were mentioning earlier, it's a collaboration so that you're looking at sustainability, resilience, where it's open space, you're maximizing open space. So all the things that we were trying to look at with park benches, picnic tables, plenty of outdoor space, especially during this whole pandemic time that these things are. So I don't know if anybody had a chance for that, but it was a fabulous webinar. The whole big area that's exciting, and
I don't know who else wants to be on that committee that Jay was just saying we should get together, but it's high performance public space. That's the new lingo.
I'd be happy to, if you said something like that, I'd be happy to be part of a committee like that as well.
Great, Mark.
I've got some engineering expertise. I could help if you guys need it.
All right, well, let's talk about the project.
Yeah.
Because I want to get into the meat of it. Go ahead, Maria, for the third time.
Thanks for inviting me once again. I have gotten Randy Collins, who is a landscape architect and a longtime South Kingstown resident, URI graduate, works for Beta Engineering, has many, many years of experience in designing various projects, has volunteered to assist us and give us the benefit of his knowledge. I have also asked Paul Jordan, who is a GIS expert and works at DEM, to help us with his map expertise that will, I think, assist in visualization of what possibilities there are along the river. And as everyone knows, I have been chatting with folks at DOT. They have completed their stormwater plan for the Saugatucket watershed and are open to suggestions. So I guess, Randy, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, what would you like me to start with? I can give you a little overview of some of the experience that I have and projects that I've worked on. I've been working as a landscape architect for over 30 years. So as Maria said, I'm a longtime landscape architect. She sort of said that. But most of the projects that I work on are public projects for municipalities throughout southern New England. I do venture up into New Hampshire and Maine every now and then. But recently, being the last 10 years or so, they've been mostly throughout Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. And oftentimes deal with the DOT, the company I work for, as it relates to the stormwater work that was being mentioned for improvements in the Saugatucket and throughout the state. We actually did a lot of the mapping. We're still completing the mapping of all of the DOT outfalls and facilities as it relates to their stormwater system. We're also one of the consultants that are working on a stormwater control plan. Our particular area is the Warwick Pond watershed. VHB, I believe, is doing the Saugatucket watershed. And there's already been a number of projects that have taken place as part of that around town. So the sand filter that is by the parking behind Main Street is one of those projects that they've done. They put one in up at the old Hazard School as well. And there's other, but part of their process is to look at all the discharge points and determine how they can improve what's coming out of the pipe by capturing it and sending it into some sort of stormwater treatment facility, or if they can or cannot even do it as part of what they're charged with doing. So I've got a bunch of information as it relates to that. We have good access to the kinds of plans that they're working on, so we could always tap into that and take a look at what's going on an as-needed basis. A lot of the projects that we do for municipalities throughout southern New England, as well as universities and such, has a lot to do with doing stormwater improvement projects. So if I could share a screen, I can show a couple of things that we do as it relates to stormwater improvements.
You're all set.
Go ahead.
Tell me when it's up on your screen.
Coming.
Here we
Got
go.
it.
So this is an example of a project that's nearby. This is up at the URI at the greenhouse parking lot. And when they expanded the parking lot a few years ago, they were working under the Rhode Island Stormwater Design Manual. And so we used a number of different stormwater techniques to be able to mitigate the stormwater coming off the parking lot, from dry swales to grass channels to infiltration basins and such. So that's just one project. A lot of what we do is inventory of stormwater systems, and I was mentioning that we did the inventory and still are doing the inventory for the statewide DOT stormwater system. And the design is goes into studies of stormwater facilities, how to make water quality improvements. This is Tanyard Brook up in Bristol, a huge watershed area that dumps directly into the bay that we made a lot of different plans for coming up with ways to improve it. All of this has to go through permitting with DOT, DEM, CRMC. So that has a lot to do with the kinds of things that we work on as well. For the park projects that I've worked on, they're all over the place, from up in Boston, a historic park in the north end of Boston, right where the Paul Revere House is, to more casual public spaces such as trails and other types of facilities. In the town itself, I did the design, oversaw the construction of the facilities at Broad Rock, so the Broad Rock playfields, the trail that connects from there over to Old Mountain Field, and the tennis courts and fields over by Broad Rock's school as well. It was a while ago, but I was involved in that. So I'm excited to be part of this project and would be more than happy to help out with any of the things that you think we need to be looking at, give you my opinion, and actually maybe even help come up with some early concepts and some of the graphics to help portray those concepts to the folks who you'd be talking to.
So I've got a question. We understand that the water quality of the river is pretty bad. How much of that is attributable to stormwater and how much of it are point sources that might not even be well documented?
Well, I would guess that a lot of it has to do with what comes in through stormwater systems. A lot of the stormwater design from, through the 20s, 30s, and even up until most recently was basically capture it, channelize it, and dump it in the river.
Right.
So I think that a lot of what you're seeing is more likely than not having to do with stormwater. Some of those point sources, there may be few of them, but they also might be things that are off the radar, certainly off the radar of DOT, but off the radar that could be dumping things in that are extremely, bad for the water. I'm not saying that they're out there. I'm just saying that, if there are any of those point sources that are not documented, those would be some that you'd really want to be trying to get your hands around, if at all possible.
Yeah, it's just because of the poor quality of the river that I've just thought that it might be more than just stormwater, untreated or poorly treated stormwater.
I would guess that there's a lot of it would be the stormwater, just understanding, the amount of stormwater that's being captured within the watershed. And then when you think about the downtown area, how much of that is really being directed almost without being treated into into the river.
So that's hopeful in that then there's the potential for doing some treatment that would appreciably improve the quality of the water in the river.
I think so. I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Randy, that is a hopeful thought. And I guess my question would be, do we know what the nature of the pollutants in the river are? And is there a difference between point source and stormwater runoff pollutants? I mean, I would suspect stormwater runoff is carbon, based pollutants, and point is biomass. It's biopollutants, right? So if we know what's in the river, if we're looking at
Coliform counts. Susan has done
Yeah,
some monitoring there. She can probably tell us.
yeah. Well, I can just say that we'd have to go back to URI to get the history of these numbers, but there has been a drop off in the number of places where the water is tested over the years. So currently, the water is tested only routinely tested only at Caleb's Dock, right there beside the parking lot, behind Mary Murphy's. And the water quality there has but after a big storm, the fecal count of that water shoots through the roof. But that's the only place where there's been steady recent monitoring. There used to be monitoring, and actually I can show, well, I have a map that shows where some of the previous monitoring places are. And one of the things we might want to think about is whether we could begin to develop some monitoring sites up there. They are on a river, they cost $500 a site, but there are a couple of places. There are three commercial endeavors in town that are not properly licensed by DEM and that do put their effluent into the water. And we might want to do some monitoring there to know exactly what is being dumped in the river there. And the mill, the old mill, apparently they also are responsible for some dumping of stuff that just comes out, the mash, what's it called? Our favorite bar up there. They dump their beer stuff into a trailer, and a certain amount of that liquid runs into the water. So there are a couple of places where we could do some monitoring to try and figure out more clearly what the point sources are and what the pollution quality looks like. But we need to get somebody like Elizabeth Heron to come and talk to us about.
But that sounds like point sources and non-point source coliform. It sounds like ducks and geese and some point sources.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we don't also have our storm water runoff problem, but we really need to understand how much each of these is contributing to the problem.
Right.
If the problem is fecal coliform, it's probably not the point sources.
Right.
And
Oh, no, I think it is because because it appears the worst numbers are always right after a storm event. And if it were ducks and geese, it would be a constant thing. So
not necessarily. If you're washing nesting places into the river, it could certainly be non-point source. It could be wildlife.
Well, one of the things that would be interesting to understand is throughout the watershed, how many of the individual sewer systems have been converted and tied over to the town sewer system, because that could definitely, if there's still a fair number of them out there, then that certainly would be one area that you'd be seeing some of the fecal coliform coming from.
This is Paul Jordan. If I could jump in for a second. One of the reasons Maria asked me, I've been at DM for 21 years. I've been doing GIS for 25. I work with a lot of the water quality folks. Elizabeth Scott, who was at DEM for many years, recently retired and is consulting now with the Southern New England Estuary Program. This is a big slug of EPA money. There's something called Restore America's Estuaries. But Elizabeth basically was the water quality czar at DEM for most of her career. In her role at SNEP, she has volunteered that she can give this group 5 to 10 hours of her time as a consultant. She's an expert on water quality in the Saugatucket. One of the main issues behind the dam there at Main Street is that you've got a shallow pond full of invasive weeds. And because the pond's so shallow, you get nutrient cycling. So even if the water coming in were clean, you could still see some nasty things happening there. Certainly, impervious surface and runoff are probably in the Saugatucket one of the, I don't want to say one of the easiest things to fix, but certainly, one that would be at the top of anyone's list to target. In talking with Elizabeth and also with Sue Kiernan, who's a deputy chief in the Office of Water Resources, there's a lot of money out there right now for just this sort of project. Saugatucket is small. EPA would like to see and potentially fund a project that would show results over a short period of time. You know, if you're looking at the Pawcatuck, the Patuxent, the Blackstone, you know, those are 30, 40, 50-year projects. Saugatucket might be 5 or 10. One of the most exciting things, and I don't think EPA has announced the grant yet, but they're talking about a grant program of potentially up to $150,000 a year for 5 years. And again, the Saugatucket's very attractive. It's very visible. DEM's very interested because of the shellfish closures in Upper Point Judith Pond. So dealing with the Saugatucket, you know, with the fecal coliform, with the nutrient flow, is how you get at that shellfishing issue up in the pond. So there's just a lot of interesting stuff happening right now. And you know, I think when Maria and I talked about this, there was maybe some brief talk about, there used to be a Saugatucket Watershed Association. I don't know where they are, if they still exist. I'm not sure who's going to be eligible to apply for grants. I'm guessing municipalities would be right up there at the top. You know, one of the things that Maria and I talked about, based on the work that URI students had done, it's something there in Saugatucket Park where you could sort of marry, you know, like an outdoor performance space with some sort of stormwater mitigation, like a rain garden or something, not just a stormwater detention pond, but a rain garden, which is actually nice to look at, I think. Very, very visible. You can put up an interpretive sign and say, you know, here we are starting. And I think the 300th anniversary is kind of a great hook. You know, on our 300th anniversary, we're paying attention to this industrial, post-industrial river and doing something about it. I have several maps that I can send you folks links for, or if you want, I can share the screen and show them. I shouldn't say several, they're just two, they're digital applications.
Could you
to help
please share them now, if
Sure.
you have them?
Yeah, and it's just to sort of give you an idea of the sort of thing that we can do to visualize, you know, where stormwater is going on the topography. So we'll start with, let's see, we'll go with that one. Share. All right, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so this is just sort of a plain old vanilla map of the watershed. You know, you can zoom in and out. You can turn layers on and off. I don't know how many folks have seen stuff like this before, but this is impervious surface in the watershed. You know, and when you look at this, the upper watershed, you know, we don't have dairy farms. We don't have a lot of, you know, cows traipsing through streams with all that implies for water quality. But in the lower watershed, you know, particularly in town here, Indian Run with this tremendous amount of impervious surface coming out of Old Tower Hill Road. This area is right in, you know, Old Wakefield here. Here's Riverside Cemetery. The elementary school's right down here. You know, so we can do a lot of this sort of thing with the Saugatucket to sort of get people looking at what some of the issues are. And again, with Elizabeth's time, you know, she wanted to sort of get a sense from the committee, maybe even a letter, sort of especially, you know, what we're interested in, what we're looking for, how would you like to see her time used? There's that. And then the other one I wanted to show you, and again, tell me if you can see this.
Yep.
All right, so this is just a 3D model of the, you know, again, this is the elementary school. This is the park. This is the basketball courts in the park. So right across the street here is the building with the laundry. This is not
Know
quick
it
work.
well.
What is it now?
It's 8 o'clock.
But just to get another look at this, we could look at an aerial photo. Again, there's the cemetery. There's a lot of vertical exaggeration here because the topography in the park is relatively flat. Without the vertical exaggeration, you can't really see, you know, what's happening here.
Right.
I'm not sure where the runoff from the school goes now. I think it's, you know, down back here somewhere. Seems to make the most sense, either through here or back here. If there's a way to capture that and run it down into a rain garden somewhere down here in the lower part of the park, and then maybe you've got some sort of a performance space nearby. Just another way to look at this is just sort of a strict shaded relief map. And again, this is the tennis court. and you can see this sort of bowl shape, right, of Saugatuck Park. This is Larry Sanctuary over here. So just an idea, just an inkling. I mean, we could do this sort of thing throughout the watershed. It's just to give people a sense of, you know, what the ground looks like. I mean, obviously, if Randy or the engineers at Beta were going to work on this, they would be much more exacting. This is all based on 2011 LiDAR data, which is a laser flying over at high altitude, shooting the laser at the ground, recording the amount of time that it takes the laser to come back to the plane. You know, speed of light times the time, you get the distance to the ground, you know where the plane is, you can create this elevation model. And this was great. 2011, USGS paid for this for all of New England. So very interesting data and a great way to sort of visualize what we're looking at. So that's really my expertise. I did want to mention some of those other programs because I think Elizabeth Scott will have much more information about that sort of thing. So if there's kind of a vision for the Saugatucket, I think Elizabeth will be happy to provide some consulting time.
And one of the things that I think is probably, not to speak for the committee, but just off the top of my head, one of the things that I think would be very beneficial for her time would be funding sources. So as we start to conceptualize different approaches to what we want to do, and we start looking at all the different elements that go into it, the stormwater, the land use, the public space, the, how the recreation may be integrated into it, maybe transportation nearby. She probably can come up with a whole list of different funding sources that can be used to be put together so that you can take out different elements and fund them as a result of the checklist that goes along with your application on those funding sources.
Yeah, Randy, I would mention as well, URI has not URI, DEM has a listserv. I need you guys to link to that, but the listserv announces all upcoming EPA and DEM grant opportunities for water quality restoration. It's actually part of their watersheds initiative. I don't know if anybody knows Ernie Pansera, but Ernie's the brain trust behind that listserv. So again, after the meeting, I'll send you links to the maps, links to the listserv. And I'm not sure if you want me to reach out again to Elizabeth or you want to do it as a committee. I think it makes
I just sent her an email this afternoon, as a matter of fact. Because there is another, the old Saugatucket Heritage Group is getting active again. In fact, if I can share my screen, I can show you these two maps. This is from their old work. They have more or less gone defunct, although we are talking about whether they can be resuscitated as a 501c3 to be an agent for, passing funds through. This little group, this watershed group, is mostly interested in little cleanup projects, pulling the tires out of the river, picking up the garbage. That's their interest. But here's the previous form of Paul's maps. And here you can see this one is important because it shows you the bottom, the watershed is here inside this circle, the same thing he just showed us, with all the little things like this triangle is the dam at the bottom of Indian Lake. These triangles, I think, are various dams. And this map is important because the watershed actually leads out down here and into the ponds down here, which is partly why this is a really important watershed. So anyway, I did reach out to Elizabeth, not thinking so much about this group because I thought she was still working for DEM. I didn't realize she'd retired until this afternoon. But I think that's great. If she's offered to give us 10 hours worth of time, that'd be terrific. Here's another way to see this watershed. And it is important, as Paul's maps just showed, a lot of what is owned, a lot of the land owned along this particular part in through downtown is owned by the town, which means, which is good news, I think. It means there doesn't have to be too much eminent domain or other kinds of things if there's property that needs to be involved in this. So
And
anyway,
Going back to that map that showed the impervious surfaces, if we were to put together a project there in downtown, we would be taking care of the flows into the river from that area. But it looked on that map like there were quite a few other areas upstream. Do you have any idea of the proportion of those?
I do have a calculation of just how much of the watershed is impervious, and I've also got one that goes back to the individual streams. So Indian Run, Rocky Brook, Mitchell Brook, I could tell you for, all the contributing streams for their little individual watersheds, how much of it is impervious. So that sort of helps you target as well. If you wanted to go after the big offenders.
And what I'm thinking is if the grant was tied to measurable results,
Right.
if they're going to be monitoring, you just have to have an idea how much we wouldn't be able to influence because it would be upstream flows
Right.
from upstream sources.
Right.
The other thing that we need to think about is the scope. The rec committees was going to go from the dam on the High Street side to the bike path. And that's where we were originally thought was our low hanging fruit as well.
Larry, I agree with that. I think that, particularly if you can get some sort of an outdoor performance space, which I think was one of the really great ideas the URI students came up with. You've got more people out there, enjoying downtown in the evening anyway. That CTC has something right next to the footbridge. I think they would be thrilled to see a larger outdoor performance space. In addition, you can have concerts out there. And then if you've got a nice demonstration project that says, okay, look, here's our start. We're taking the stormwater from the school parking lot, and we're treating that stormwater. And while it's a small amount, you can characterize, you can say, here's how many pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus that we're removing from flowing into the river. And you can really sort of tie those things together. People are out there, they're seeing the rain garden. I think that's a small enough project to get started as you think about what do we want to do in the larger watershed if we could get $150,000 a year from EPA.
Right. Well, I would just like to add that we just did stormwater, a whole new drainage system on High Street.
Yes.
And those were just manholes or containers, and that's all they did. And I own Pier Cleaners across the street from that basketball court, and I couldn't understand why part of that project wasn't going to be treating all the water in that drain coming down to what I know is the lowest point, and it goes right into the river somewhere right across the street from me. Maybe in a couple of areas, but in this area that we're targeting, we should be able to capture that fairly simply, and with the current geography of the site, treat all the water that comes off the hill that goes onto High Street, and not just the elementary school, and it be in this kind of a project, low hanging fruit. But I don't know.
I can tell you, Larry, a couple of reasons why they.
Can I add something here?
Go ahead, Mark.
Just to add some other factors into this. First of all, I think it's great what you're considering there. It's a wonderful thing to do. I live right down there, and I've always been interested in doing something in that area. In fact, many years ago, when I first got here in the 1970s, I was an architect who developed an arts area right down at the river. I forgot what his name was now, but he was an architect, but it was part of this whole reevaluation of the power of that area. But a couple of things that I've been thinking about with that area is, one, I've always wanted to put the farmer's market down there. Saturday Farmers Market. And I approached Braden Farms and Ken and someone else, and they loved the idea. And then the pandemic came. But it's just something to keep in mind, because it would be a wonderful place to bring walking
Yes.
traffic
Right.
from all through the town and bring them on a Saturday for that for the market. That could
Close to the
also be part
businesses.
of the arts and arts district, and it could fit into this idea of the place where people could come and listen to music. They could listen to music. They could shop. There's a lot of that could be the center, essentially the center of town, as I see it. Another thing that I've been working on in my kids' pod during this time, I've done a lot of projects, education projects around site-based, around the issue of learning your place, understanding where you live. And one of the things I've been doing with the kids is getting them to understand the role of the Saugatucket River. And it would be really good to integrate whatever we do with all of this stormwater, all of this idea of that area, and integrate it into educational value for kids to learn all about all of this stuff that we've been talking about. Because after all, in some ways, that area is also the beginning spot for Wakefield. It's where the mill was that attracted all the people there. And it creates this incredibly powerful vortex of history and of culture and of contemporary sense of place. And it could be linked up to the school and could become a source of education. We got a grant to do a public garden up at the top there before the pandemic came. So it's one of these places in terms of writing grants that's a completely integrated site with all kinds of community ecological connections that could be a real demonstration project for all of this area as well as other areas. So the last thing is, I think we don't also want to forget public input. We don't want to kind of set this thing in motion without getting suggestions and getting a sense of community
Yeah.
sense of what they would do with that area.
Well, Mark, that's why we drafted a
already done it.
letter.
Yeah.
Go
Good.
ahead.
Good, but I mean, make it formal, make it a party, make it an adventure that we are going to do this wonderful project and we want your input in it. What would you like to see there?
Yeah.
But we need to come up with the first go round of the design to show them. Because we've already gone to all the stakeholders, property owners along Main Street and High Street, and we've got their input.
Yeah.
And they're behind the project when the students did it. So now what we need to do is come up with, this is the scope, this is how much money, this is the time frame, and the rec committee needs to know the time frame,
Right.
because they have to spend their money per DEM in so many months, and they
Right.
don't want to violate that. So that's
I
what
could-
we have to come with.
I could see that, Larry. I just think it might be a good thing to do, not necessarily to mess with the project too much, but I think we could get some really interesting input that could be put into the grant program as well. And you just don't want to give the sense that this is an over, that we're throwing something down their throats.
Mark,
From a
the,
public relations point of view.
Go ahead, Jay.
One thing I haven't heard mentioned that we talked about a lot previously, and I'm just wondering, maybe somebody can discuss the aspect of the overhanging trees and the birds that you do a lot of business into the Saugatucket. That was one of the key things that the students brought out in their study, that those overhanging trees were nesting points. And there are an awful lot of birds that summer down there and some go over the winter. So I'm wondering how much of an impact, maybe somebody would have an idea whether we should study that or whether it's unknown. how much of an impact the birds and the overhanging limbs have on the water quality.
That's
Randy,
Elizabeth
Paul?
will have to answer that question.
There's so many great ideas of what we want to do, from the amphitheater to cleaning up to working with the rec department. So our little subgroup working, Brian Smith, Susan, myself, and collaborating with Randy and Maria, we thought that we should send a letter to the town council to say that we want to start working on this project. And we thought to help us get funds to do all these wonderful ideas and to get something comprehensive and put together, is we want to let the town council know first, this is what we'd like to do. And we thought to add the anniversary, the 300th anniversary for the town as it's the milestone markings, in a sense, so that maybe we have a ribbon cutting at one of the key points of this whole Saugatucket project and this whole wonderful vision we have for it, connecting the downtown Main Street with the Saugatucket River and open space and wonderful public things that we do. And like Mark Levitt was saying about having the farmers market down there and having more opportunities for people to picnic and things like that. So I think we have to, I hope we can vote tonight to say we're going to get a letter out to the town council, say that we'd like to collaborate and just get a little sentence in there, collaborating with various departments in the, so that we can seek funding. I mean, I think, are we at that point yet?
I've got a question on that. And I did see the letter. I think it's pretty well written. But basically, as I understand it, we're asking the town council to fund preliminary design. And my question is, do we need to develop the concept a little more before they put money on the table for preliminary design?
Go ahead, Randy.
So I think, you know, what you really, I think, need to do as part of this is to start to put pen to paper, start putting ideas down on paper so that you start to capture that. The student work is a good starting point. But I would agree with Mark that, you know, we probably want to get to a point somewhere along the process early on where there's public input. But I also agree, Larry, that if there's been a lot of input based on the student work, we should know all that and have that sort of a compilation of that on the paper. I will just say this, I've come in after the URI students and RISD students have done projects as part of their classwork. And there's always.
Oh,
I hear you.
We lost you, Randy.
Gonna unmute.
He's not muted. He's got a problem with his.
Yeah.
Physical problem,
Am I back?
There you go. You're
There you're
back.
back.
No, whenever I touch my computer, it for some reason wants to cut me off. Maybe it knows something that I don't know. But what I was saying was, I think one of the things that needs to be done as part of putting the ideas down on paper is to do a really good evaluation of the practicability of some of the URI student ideas, because generally speaking, sometimes you don't want to go down the trail of something that's not really feasible, constructible, fundable, permittable. So I think that the idea of putting it on paper before we go out, and I think that's something that I would be happy to assist on, is to be able to come up with a way to capture all these ideas, get it on paper, and then work with that group that was being talked about earlier between the rec department and others, so that we can start to get their input early on. And from that, once you sort of coalesce around to call it a master plan of what should be done in that area, then you could start to scope out an idea of what the costs are going to be, not only to construct the different facilities, but what the designer services would be to take it to the next level.
And something
We've
to
already,
to the stakeholders, the property owners, the
Correct.
town people. So and that's when they tweak it. That's what I'm saying.
we've already done that.
What's the time frame?
We've already done it. We've already made our list of our priorities of the EDC. Now, somebody else can take a look and see if they make sense or add and subtract to that list. but we have already done our priority list. I think there are 4 items that we considered key. And nobody answered my question about trimming back the branches along the river. I'd like an answer on that. Is that something that's going to improve water quality? Because it's going to let sun in there, and the sun has a way of taking care of certain microbes. I'd like to know if that's just a pie in the sky or if that would help. It
Go
certainly
ahead,
doesn't
Paul.
look good as it is. There's all kinds of overhanging branches. And that would be something that could be tackled at some rate, probably by the Parks and Rec.
Well,
Go ahead,
I'd like an
Paul.
answer.
Let me just jump in there for a second. Again, once we get talking with Elizabeth, you know, this is what she did for her entire career at DEM, I don't know, 25, 30 years. Elizabeth will know exactly what the major issues are in the Saugatucket. And you know, if branches are an issue and overhanging nesting birds, she will tell you. There certainly was a case where there was a roost of pigeons living under a bridge, and they were the major contributing factor to a water quality problem. But she will know, and she can provide a lot of guidance on what sorts of projects to think about. So,
Randy, what's the time frame on the pen to paper kind of thing? Is it 6 months? Is it 3 months? Is it a year and a half?
No, I think it could be something to be done in over the course of a couple of months. So I would timeline it this way. Give it a month to be able to draw up a plan that is based on all the information that's currently available, from the list that Jay was just mentioning to the polling that you've done with the folks on Main Street and the business owners, to even some early meetings with the Park and Recs to talk about some of the things that they have currently planned for that, and then put together a plan that is a master plan. And I think the importance of the master plan is it's a graphic that explains what you want to have done, what you're thinking about doing, in a way that most people can relate to. It's a picture. I'm going to screen share again real quick, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
This is a graphic of a sports complex in Middletown. It ultimately got voted down because it was something that was being put on a open space parcel and farmland, but it was the work of a group to come up with a concept behind how to possibly make this into a sports and recreation center. So you have baseball fields, soccer and lacrosse fields, you have a field house, you have parking, you have drainage areas, you have wetland areas. So basically it's a way to take all the ideas and put them into a graphic so that you can really start to communicate with people what it is that you're considering. And, you know, you can take it to the next level, which is to look at, you know, the graphic can be, now this is a more urban condition, but this is a graphic of the park in North Square, a very small, tiny public space that we needed to communicate to the residents and business owners in the North End what it could look like. And so I think, you know, to finish answering your question, Larry, I think a couple of months to get the early stages of a master plan on paper, and then maybe another couple of months to get input. And then, you know, then I think you'd have something that, if everything goes well, you'd be able to, you know, have something in late spring.
One of the things that, to Joanne's point about needing funding at the beginning, that we learned from Parks and Recreation is they do have this 80,000. They were interested in knowing, they would want to know, we should involve them in developing the master plan, because some of the things that they've put in there, like replacing the fence, they could be willing to change that from replacing that fence to dealing with the fence on the other side of the street that needs to be painted and whatever. So they were remarkably flexible in, you know, they have to meet the terms of their grant, and we don't want them not to do that, but they have a lot of money or a certain amount of money to get us started with some things that overlap with what they've asked for, even if they're not exactly what it is they've asked for. They've asked for cleaning up some invasives. They've asked for replacing some fence. They've asked for repairing some paths. Each of those things could be part of this master plan. And we could use their money as a way to kind of get started with it, and they would fulfill their grant. And I thought they were remarkably open to discussing how that would unfold.
Go
I
ahead,
do
Paul.
think we need to deal with them fairly quickly
Right.
because
Absolutely.
they're kind of, they just learned about us just as we learned about them, and they're kind of ready to go. So they need to see that we are actively developing something that they can actively participate in and react to, so that we can, I just feel like this needs to get started.
Susan,
Paul, go
one of
ahead.
the great things about DEM is that we're small. We all have regular conversations with the director. All of this money for clean water and for recreation grants, and open space grants, all comes from the green economy bonds. So they're all linked. It's always possible to get an extension on a grant. I think we gave the town a couple of extensions on the bikeway grant over to South County Commons. Again, DEM's small. So I work, 20 feet from the person that handles the rec grants and another person that does the open space grants. I think when you start tying all these things together, it's just the sort of thing that we like to see. To say that you've got a rec grant, and now you're coming in for a water quality grant, and they're both kind of in the same place with connected goals. No one's going to slap the town down and withhold the grant. I mean,
No, that's what they made clear to us too. And they said it's a 2-year, they have 2 years. And so it's not as though they need to start, they're going to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow.
and
But
they could get another 2.
yeah, they said they could probably get an extension. But I do think we need, in order to keep them engaged, they need to feel that we are being realistic about what we are talking about, so that their project can be wrapped into this. That's all I mean.
Has anybody got the schools involved at all?
Well, we know we have to talk to the school committee. The
Not
building.
yet. Yeah.
But
I just think we need to get a letter to the town council just to say we want to work on this project for the anniversary, just as a courtesy. I mean, Rob, don't you think we need to get something to them as to go top down as their blessing as a FYI, and that we want to start getting a committee together and.
So I think there are 2 different things that need to be dealt with. And I'm going to come back to, again, my recommendation that you separate these 2 things. I think there is a 300th anniversary committee that needs to be established. There's a whole host of things that need to be done around a 300-year celebration of the town. This is one thing that should be part of that. I love the idea of, some sort of event around the idea of drawing attention to the efforts that are underway to improve the water quality and to respect the history, tradition, contributions of the river. Those are all great. What the council needs to act on, though, quickly with regard to the 300th anniversary is setting up a group that can handle all of the 300 anniversary celebration stuff. And to the extent that the Economic Development Committee wants to influence the breadth and scope of that totality of activities, I think you need to get a letter to the council saying, this is what we imagine for the 300th celebration. It includes stuff around the river, but it also includes stuff on Main Street, and it also includes walking tours of the village, whatever those things are. I think there's a 300th anniversary celebration piece that is very distinct from water quality on the Saugatucket. I think that those 2 things are related, but they are distinct. The other thing that I think about this project generally is the council needs enough. I used to work as a consultant, and we used to say, give them something to say no to. You've got to give them something concrete enough so that they know what they're being asked to do. And if you know what they're saying no to, you can always walk it back to what they can say yes to. We need specificity. And if the committee comes to the council with a vague, undeveloped idea, they can't say yes or no. They don't know what to do with that, especially when you're looking at things like, has the neighborhood, are we walking into a neighborhood fight by saying yes? I mean, you got to take that stuff out of the equation.
So what I heard was the master plan is maybe the first step. That's the menu that has many things on it. Then that goes through a review with the community, with various people to whittle it down to something that looks more like a concept that maybe the town council can say yes or no to.
We could do that, or we could take the list that we developed and say, this is the basis. And then ask for input from other committees, other people, if they want to add things to it. Give them a
I
list of
think
other
that-
things, give them a list of other things that were on our list that we ruled out, and ask them to add anything they wanted to add, but show them what we have already done.
But do they need to see it visually like you'd see in a master plan?
Yeah. Because I think our list is not nearly specific enough.
Well, it could be more specific, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it needs some stuff like Randy and Paul could add to it.
Yeah, some of the Paul's visualization tools and some of our visualization tools, I think, could really help allow people to fully understand, even in the most loose conceptual sort of way, what the kinds of things are that you're considering. I think the other thing that needs to be part of that process is talking about order of magnitude costs for different things, how likely things are able to get permitted. It doesn't make any sense to talk about ideas for a long, long time to get to a point where the regulatory
Can't be
agencies
funded.
say, well, that's never going to happen.
Right.
You don't want to be to the point that was just made. You don't want to be spinning your wheels and bringing more questions. You want to, through the process, start to answer some of the questions as well.
I think now's the time to, so Randy, you're saying as a volunteer, you could come up with some version 1.0 of that what we're calling a master plan in a couple of months, maybe 4.
Oh yeah, but I think there's what I would suggest, and I do a lot, much as I said early on, most of the projects I work on are for cities and towns.
Right.
And the most successful projects are those that have a focused committee that is charged with being able to make sure the master plan is going in the right direction, knows when to get involvement from the different folks that need to look at it from an official basis, and it keeps the thing moving along. So I'm happy to be that person that is the go-to to help develop that plan that pulls all the different threads together, all the different ideas and things that need to be considered, and create the tool that can communicate the ideas, plan view, renderings and such to folks and help to sort of facilitate that process. I'm happy to do that.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
we already have Joanne and Brian and Susan as an unofficial subcommittee that could work with you on that. And I think that
And we're going to add the park people.
I was gonna say, Susan, that how we left it with them is that we would come back to them after discussing everything tonight. And I think we should have a couple of their members
Yep.
join you and try to herd this herd of cats together and come up with this master plan. Hopefully in the next 2 months. And
Well, Larry, I
then
think
go
that's
to
what-
the town council.
Yeah, I think that's what they said. They said at their next meeting, which must be in 2 weeks, they were going to pick the people who are going to join the 3 of us.
Right.
And then we were going to work with the Pauls and the Randys.
Randy.
To
Right.
try to figure out
And
how to
Maria.
merge what and what they have as their plan and what we want as our plan to try to
Right.
begin to
And you
take that.
guys have all what we've already created.
Yeah, we
from
have-
the
yeah.
Students and the landholders and
Yeah.
stakeholders. So I think that's good enough. And then I'm excited that I thought as we started talking and the range started getting bigger and bigger up the river and site specific and everything else. I wanted to hone it down so that we can accomplish this, not hopefully in my lifetime.
Two things.
Exactly. Do we need
Things.
Jamie
I
on
would
this
like-
committee?
I think that the committee,
Or Brian?
there should be a committee formed and the town council should appoint a committee specifically to include people from Parks and Rec, EDC, and maybe planning, to go forward with this. I think if it's disjointed and each committee is doing it on their own, it's a problem. If one committee is created specifically for that purpose, it could be for a period of 2 years or 3 years to get us through this whole thing. And I think it would be much more efficient, number one. Number two, one of the things that we should do is figure out if that amphitheater, the flood control amphitheater, is too big of a project. That's my favorite project. I think would be great. But if it's too big of a project to include in this whole thing, and if it is, let's get it out. I think, Randy, you might be able to take a look at that, and certainly the gentleman from DEM could take a look at that. But the flooding down there is a problem.
Jay, I think we have the people in the little boxes on your screen, right on this, that can bring those questions and have answers in 2 months.
So I certainly
don't
agree.
think, you want to wait another 2 months, 3 months to form another committee, you can have it. I don't want to do that.
The committee's
So I
already
would
there.
offer
All we
the-
need to do is get a town council meeting to say, all right, these people are now a committee.
I
See,
would
and
offer
we-
the following observation though, Jay. If you're going to form a special committee to deal with the natural resource that is the Saugatucket River, you're going to have to bring the Conservation Commission in. You're going to have to bring the Sustainability Committee in. Just beginning to think about this touches on the quality of life and the quality of the policies in many, many different areas. I think that this committee is the genesis of the idea. I think you guys need to sort of keep leading it and keep going. If run it at least to ground. Let's find out what the order of magnitude price is. Let's find out if it's a viable project.
And I do, Rob, I do think we have always thought that after we got to the point of having some basic master plan, we were going to go after. This town has a lot of expertise. There are a lot of people in here work at URI and do all these things, and we can call on those people
Yes.
as we have something for them to react with. So
Yes, my point really speaks to the logistics of managing another committee.
yeah, no, I'm
Has
not
to
in
post
favor of another.
meetings,
No, I'm not in favor of another committee. I'm just saying we can draw on people. I mean, that's why I wrote to Elizabeth, because I knew she was somebody in town who could help with us, but she's just one. There actually are several people as we.
Right.
Jay, if
What-
Rhode
what-
Island, if Rhode Island's Open Meetings Act wasn't as tough as it is, I think I'd agree with you. But it's a tough regime.
But it's going to be tough too. I mean, I'm thinking about that also. It's going to be tough too if you have people meeting and they don't have an open meeting. They're going to have 3 people from EDC, you're going to have people from Parks and Rec. You've
You
got a
have to be
problem.
careful.
But no
problem.
quorums, Jay. That's the key. No
Yeah, but
quorum.
you gotta be, you
Be
can't
careful.
violate the spirit of the law either. I mean, the truth of the matter is property rights will be affected by what you're proposing to do here. So you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you're doing public business. You have
Right,
to be careful.
but we're coming up with just the original
Yeah.
1.0 vision.
Yeah,
I think by having 3 of our people, 2 or 3 of theirs, with the
Yeah.
the volunteers to come up with something that we can put our hands around, I think is all right. And it's the quickest way to do it.
I don't know. I hope so. Sounds like that's what we're going to do. I hope we don't get into a jam with open meeting.
Mhm. Larry, I
Yeah,
suggest we move the agenda. We've been talking about this for over 40 minutes now. And there's other stuff on here I'm sure we want to get to.
all right. So is that what somebody wants to propose? And then we'll go to the rec committee in 2 weeks and see if they want to participate and how many people they want to volunteer on this.
I thought they said they were going to, so is after
Well,
their
yeah.
next meeting, we'll.
Right.
get in
So-
touch with them.
And we'll take the expertise of our members of our community and really appreciate it and try to come up with something that everybody will be proud of. Because I told you from day one, I thought it was going to affect everybody in the town, and I think everybody will be standing on every rock and ledge screaming out to do it. But that's just my personal opinion. And, you know, let's take a vote. Let's get a motion on the table so we can, this is to authorize this group of 3 to meet with members to be determined from the rec committee to work with our volunteer town people to come up with quote unquote a 1.0 master plan. How's that?
Great.
All right, you want to make that, Susan?
You just did, Larry.
I can't make a motion.
Oh,
Yes, you can.
yes, you can.
All right, then I will make the motion.
I second it. I
That's the
second it.
first motion. That's the first motion I've made in 25 years.
Well, it was a good one. And Joanne and I are seconding it.
All right. Now, we've had plenty of discussion, but I gotta call it. Is there any further discussion? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I hear no opposed, so the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Randy, I really appreciate your time. Paul, thank you so much for your input. You bring a lot to the table. And I think your friends, Elizabeth and Sue, I think they're gonna be really excited about this. And they won't believe that it started in an EDC meeting that wants to pave South County, you know? So,
All right, good night.
thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Right,
Thank you.
going on to
Good
the
night.
next item.
Thank you.
I think that's, what was it, COVID? You wanna update us on COVID, Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, so the big news lately has been the COVID vaccines. I will try to explain the state of COVID vaccination program.
Hey, Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Larry, I want to go back to the tricentennial. I do have
Okay,
an update.
all right. I took things out of order, Rob, sorry.
Okay, it's very, very brief. What I did is I contacted the librarian over at the Peaceville Public Library, and I asked her if I could see the microfiche from the newspapers of 1973 to get an idea of what went on for the 250th. And unfortunately, they have shut down their microfilm facility due to COVID. And she said it won't be open for at least a couple of months. So I introduced myself, I explained what we were trying to do, and she said that she believes that the newspapers, Narragansett Times from 1973, is bound in a book, as well as being microfilm. And she's going to get back to me, so at least we can go in and take a look and back what my research has said for what went on in 1973. And we can get an idea of what the 250th anniversary looked like. So I pressed her further. I said, well, what about 1923, which is the 200-year anniversary? And she said, oh, we definitely have that. And I said, okay. So she is going to get back to me.
That's great. That's great.
Can I ask if we're sure what date we're operating under? Because I looked into it a little bit, and there's a bunch of dates. There's a date where the legislature voted to separate the towns. There's a date where they came up with the borderline. And then 23 is the date, I guess, where the charter was adopted.
That's correct.
Is that what we're using?
Yes, 1723 is when the town was incorporated. So the 200th would be 1923. 250th was 1973. So I was there in 1973 and participated all weekend in the festivities.
You didn't take good notes so that we could have had them?
Hey, Joanne, I was only 21. I was more interested in the girl I was with. So the only thing, my memory at the time, I have two memories. First of all, the parade was the longest parade that I've ever seen in the town in memory. Every fire truck in Rhode Island was here. Buddy Cianci even marched in a parade. There was a large town picnic at Old Mountain Fields. There was an incredible fireworks display. Yeah, and my level of interest is, how much did the council appropriate in terms of money for this? Because if you're gonna have a fireworks display, you're gonna have a big town picnic, you're gonna have all these parades and all these units coming in. All of that costs money. And I'm very curious to see what she's gonna come up with, but she seemed like she was really willing to work with us, and so I'll have something to report out, hopefully in the next meeting.
Does the town have any records? Because they'd have the budget, you know?
1973, yeah.
It would be hard copy. There were no computers. There's
Yeah.
probably no microfiche, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that it isn't on microfilm, actually, Joanne. I'm hoping that it's bound. And she speculated that the information that we're looking at for may also be in URI's library, because URI's library has the Providence Journal in there.
I
And
will check with our director of special collections unit. Yeah.
yeah, so it's an ask, you know?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, so Larry, that's all I have for it, but at least I'm starting to do some kind of research and starting to jog my memory about what I did almost 50 years ago.
Henry, you're taking the lead on this, and
Thanks.
the town of Wesley just had a 300th, I believe, within the last year.
It did, and it was great.
And I think you can get a lot of suggestions and ideas for what they did for their 300th. I know that their chamber, which is called now the Ocean Community,
Ocean State Community.
right?
Yeah, Larry, are you alluding to our friend down there?
Yep. And Lisa, I think, can help give you all kinds of information on what other towns have done.
Okay,
It was spread throughout the year.
yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right, Rob, I apologize, but
Oh, no.
All right, now we can go on.
All right, so quick as I can do it, summary of the COVID vaccination rollout and where we are. There's been a lot of news around what's going on with COVID vaccinations. Essentially, the things to know are these. There are 3 channels by which COVID vaccinations will be given out in Rhode Island, or it appears to be the case that there will be 3 channels. There is a state channel. The state will be setting up vaccination centers. Those are not yet set up. There is a private sector channel, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, anybody with a pharmacy, Stop and Shop where they have pharmacies, are all places where the federal government will be sending vaccine. And then there is regional and municipal pods. South Road School in South Kingstown is the regional pod for Southern Rhode Island. The feds are controlling the supply of vaccines. So what flows to each of those channels depends in large part on what the federal policy is. And the feds seem to be favoring the second channel, the pharmacy channel. That makes sense. Those guys do flu vaccinations every year. They're geared up for it. They can handle medical information. You know, there's just a million reasons why going with the established distribution chain for drug distribution makes sense. So I think we're going to see that ends up being the largest channel for distribution of COVID vaccines. The noise over the last couple of weeks is largely because we were given here in Rhode Island a small number, 5,000 for the entire state, small number of doses, and the state scrambled to figure out how to get those into the arms of 75-year-olds. So they did a pro rata distribution. Your portion of the population is what you got. We got 150 doses here in South Kingstown for a population over 75 of 2,900 and something. persons, created all sorts of chaos because everybody was told you can get vaccinated now. And we had 150 doses for 3,000 people. So it was not a good week. That will continue for a little bit longer. Walgreens and CVS are going to open up their Rhode Island distribution channel this weekend, Saturday for CVS, Sunday for Walgreens. And I think what we're going to see is those become the dominant mechanisms for getting vaccinated over the next few weeks.
But isn't
I think
CVS
more
only,
about I'm sorry, Susan?
isn't CVS only opening 4 places this
I
weekend?
thought it was 14, but to be honest with you, it just came at me
Okay.
late this afternoon, so I'm not sure what that number is.
Is there a verification card for people who, sorry,
There is not.
so,
There is an article in the Boston Globe today about the software company in Burlington, Massachusetts that made the West Virginia rollout extremely efficient. I've talked to a lot of my buddies down in West Virginia. They're all vaccinated now. And it's a matter of scheduling. It's scheduling software. We should have it. We should have it, if not in the state, in the town. What happens is people get called. They get their name on a list, and then there's a call back when the vaccine is available and they go get vaccinated.
so
It's not
there's
rocket-
no way
it's
of
not rocket
verifying who gets vaccinated.
What?
There's no way of verifying who gets.
Yeah, there is a way. It's by age.
No. Once you get vaccinated, if I
Yes.
want to go
Verified.
travel on an airplane or something, and I say I was vaccinated, there's no uniformly recognized card or system to certify that.
That's
I've
not
been
the case. That's not the
Yeah,
case.
Tom.
It's a
Tom.
matter of record.
There's a card. My wife has one that has
Okay,
both doses that she got. It is stamped on the dates that she got them.
okay. So there is a means of.
Yeah, there is.
Okay,
So-
But I've heard that the town, in trying to do it is using like the voter database,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
but
Jay is exactly
you don't
right.
have, you don't have the telephone numbers.
That's right.
of-
So
of
Jay is exactly right, that what you need in order to roll out a program is a list. You need a way to register people for their appointments. The towns in Rhode Island were notified on Thursday that they needed to have a list to vaccinate on Sunday.
Jeez.
Wow.
So, what do you do with that? You go to your voter registration list because it's the only damn list you've got. So that's what. And you're right, Larry, not everybody wants to have their phone number on a voter registration list because they don't want to be called by the campaigns. So what we did was we took our voter registration list and we worked down the voter registration list from the oldest people in town. And with the 150 doses, we're only down to about the 97-year-olds. So it's going to be a while before we get to the 75-year-olds.
Yeah, and there's supposedly a list of critical people, people like my wife, who doesn't have a spleen, who are very, very much prone to get infections. And
Yes.
that list has not been updated. Nobody's gone to the doctors and saying,
And
who do you have that needs to get this vaccine more than other people?
And the
So it's kind of
municipalities don't-
frustrating.
Right. And the municipalities don't have access to those lists either, and really shouldn't, to be honest with you. You do not want, a rec facility or a senior center employee to have sensitive medical information about everybody in town. It's just
No.
not a great idea.
No, it's not a good idea, but I mean,
For
you can't,
handling,
the state has the list
yep.
of people who are, critically need the vaccine. But
But don't-
how is it updated? There's,
So the next thing to know, there's the 3 channels, and the next thing to know is that the state's strategy for vaccination is to start with the oldest groups first and move down the ranks. But they are cumulative. So the 75 plus began the first week of February and will continue forever. In the middle of February, late February, the 70 to 74-year-olds come online. So you can think of it as the A group, then the A plus B group, then the 65s to 70. So it's the A plus the B plus the C, and they're cumulative as you go through the year. The 75-year-olds who are not lucky enough to get vaccinated early will have to be in the same bundle as everyone else, 70, 65, et cetera.
All right,
With the-
but how,
with the
how is
flow of
James White gonna
vaccines-
be involved?
With the
I'm
flow of
sorry?
vaccines coming this so slowly, that's going to be a problem.
It could be, but the other thing to know is that if the vaccines start flowing through that distribution network that is the private pharmacies, it may start moving much quicker. Again, the pharmacies are used to doing flu vaccine every single year. They know what they're doing. The feds are pushing supply to them. They know what they're doing. I think we're going to start seeing this clear up pretty quickly. But it's not going to be perfectly bumpless for sure.
All right, Rob, my only question is the people that are compromised with a compromised condition,
Mhm.
besides their age, they get bumped up, correct? And where do they
So
get bumped up in what you just
Third,
described?
the third group in Rhode Island, so it goes 75 plus, 70 to 74, which comes in at about the end of February, third week of February, thereabouts. And at about the same time, 16 to 65 with immune compromised systems come online.
Then what about the
Just
65 to
before
70
March,
gap?
I'm sorry?
What about the gap of 65-year-olds to 75-year-olds?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head where they are, but they've got to be in there.
Yeah,
So Rob, the town is calling people based on the voter rolls to notify them that they're eligible and they can make an appointment. Now, who's going to do that when the pharmacies take over?
So the pharmacies will rely on an online registration system.
And,
Yeah.
and there's no, that hasn't been promulgated yet.
I'm sure they've got the software, they've got it set up, but they haven't opened up their registration systems yet.
But see, that's difficult for the 95-year-old who doesn't have a computer.
That's right. And that's part of the reason why the municipalities are leading with that group. Everybody over 65, between 65 and 70 is probably where you start seeing enough technology savvy that you're going to be okay. But 75, it's tough. It's tough.
Okay.
So is the town going to continue to get vaccines?
The town is currently being told that we will get 210 doses for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Again, that will get us not even, that'll get us a third of the way through our 75-year-old population.
We'll
75,
get you to 90.
right. But at the
Maybe.
same time, that group will be eligible to go to CVS and go to Walgreens. And we'll see that group clear not only through the town and through the regional pods, the points of distribution. We'll see that group clearing through the state facilities, and we'll see that group clearing through the private facilities.
I mean, it makes sense that a public notice goes out and anybody who's, 85 to 90 or 100 or an over 85 or 95 plus,
Between these few days, go to the pharmacy, show your ID or some kind of identification of
Right.
driver or something. And then 85 to 90, and kind of keep doing that, public notice, keep in the paper and.
That's essentially what's going on. The problem is there's no perfect public notice. There just isn't.
Radio.
Yeah, it's really
Well, the
sad
problem is
because
you get people who are confused about the radio message. You hear 75 this week, 65 next week, and now you have confusion.
Yeah, yeah.
and in West Virginia, everything was totally seamless. People called up, they got an appointment date, they went and they got their vaccines. There were no lines. The whole thing worked perfectly.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely better ways to do this than the one we've.
I'm not taking any swipes at you or the
Oh,
town
no,
of South
believe me,
Kingstown.
I
The
take
state
no
rollout, the state
I will
rollout
tell
has
you
been
this.
horrible.
I was told on Thursday that we were going to have to vaccinate 150 people on Sunday, and we did. I'm not at all ashamed of what we've done.
Good job. No,
Great
yeah,
job.
The state has done a lousy job of rolling this out. And I heard the state medical director was on, and it seems like she's not sure what she's doing yet. She was
It's
on the TV.
wobbly.
Yeah,
It's
she gave an
wobbly.
interview and she was on TV and
They're not getting They're
The
not
supply.
getting a lot of supply. I mean, they're,
Correct.
she
It's not a
said,
matter of supply, though. I mean, it's a matter of managing the supply that you get and giving people confidence that everything is going to line up and work well.
So
well,
I will share my personal observation about this. When you have 150 doses, you do not make a big press announcement about it. You
No.
simply call up and you say, hey, find me 150 of your most vulnerable people
Mm.
in this shop, please. You make no fanfare, you get nobody excited. I will say this sort of glibly and cutely. There are two things you learn about public relations if you work in government. The first is never overpromise. You
Right.
always underpromise and overdeliver. And the second is never get between senior citizens in anything that's free. Don't do it.
Well, as interesting as this
That's maybe that's the
discussion is,
problem, that we should be
we're
charged.
straying quite a bit from the agenda.
All right, so, on the COVID front, the new PPP money is flowing. People, we've applied, it's going. And, I think there's more money for entities like, Chris Simpson and the Contemporary Theater. It's a little better than before.
Great.
So, that's started. And banks are taking applications. They're approving them and the money is flowing. So that's on the business front. All right. Last item is economic development in town, business projects or anything else. Brian, has any new projects come on or applications filed or anything like that?
No, I mean, nothing brand new. Everything's pretty much advancing, existing projects that are moving forward.
Shepherd's Run and
Shepherd's Run, we've discussed at the last meeting. It's really the same status. They closed on the property and they're moving forward with the projects that they can do without a significant amount of financing, rehabbing existing structures and whatnot out there.
Hey,
Actually,
hey,
Brian, I
Rob.
just have, or Larry, I have a
Rob.
quick update on Shepherd's Run.
Oh.
We did receive an application for a preliminary plan. They did receive their Rhode Island DOT and Rhode Island DEM permits for curb cut and as well as on-site septic. So again, they're sitting on a table in our office in the permitting queue for their next phase.
That's for the hotel?
It primarily
Conference
the
center.
winery right now. The larger aspect of a hotel, the 30, 40 rooms, is in a subsequent phase.
Okay, hey, Rob.
yes,
Yeah, can you give us an update on Schneider Electric? Because the last email you had
Yes.
sent me is that both Tom and I were doing some research into that.
Yep.
But from the email that you sent me a couple of weeks ago, sounded you were much further ahead than,
yeah, we've been over there very often. They've been actually very generous and they're disposing of personal property and they're donating much of it to the town. So we've been over there quite often over the last month or month and a half. And the reports we're getting are that there are a number of prospective buyers who are coming through the facility on a fairly regular basis. Colliers International is a they're a world-renowned commercial
yeah.
property management and realtor. They've got a very strong team, and the team is bringing prospective buyers through. So that's good news. We'll
Do you
see.
have do you have a feel for what type of clients? Would it be manufacturing or?
Yeah, that's actually seems to be what folks who are coming through are thinking about doing. Now, what kind of manufacturing, I don't know. They haven't told. I haven't gotten that word. I haven't spoken to anybody directly over there. I'm relying on third-party reports from staff.
Do you need Tom and I to do anything, or?
So
Oh.
I think that the instinct to be helpful is good here. I think that what we ought to be thinking about is if there are folks, businesses, leads. I mean, if there are leads, we should be pointing them toward Colliers. Just let them know. These guys,
Okay.
the name of the realtor is up on the website.
Yeah,
We just tell them, hey, we were talking to somebody and they might be interested. Here's their number.
okay,
Kind of thing could be helpful.
all right.
I mean, I wouldn't waste their time, if it's just some guy at the end of the bar who, is just talking nonsense. But if we have a real lead, I think they'd be happy to follow it up.
Planet Fitness, the update on that is they start construction tentatively in June on the inside and open for September.
And
Uh,
River,
Everybody asks, that's what the latest timeframe is.
and River Edge is closed, right?
River Bend?
And River Bend? Did they close?
Riverbend, yes, they
Yeah,
closed.
she's closed.
And Mary Murphy's is gone.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And Pet Value is gone. Rumford Pet Center is going into where Pet Value was. So,
What's going to happen in that River Bend building? Who owns that, Larry?
the
Rose family.
Rose family.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Mary Murphy's? That building is actually two sides of, there's the coffee shop across the way. That was one owner, right?
Yeah, I had talked to him a while ago, and he told me he was having problems making ends meet.
Yeah, even before COVID, we were.
Yeah, they weren't doing well.
No.
And the Calf Bar that's next to Monroe Realty, that's moving.
Oh,
to,
where?
Down near River's Edge, where the meat market used to be.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Oh, good.
strip printing place.
Yeah.
They're moving there.
Oh, that's great.
So if you know of any businesses looking for a small spot, Ken Monroe is looking for a tenant to replace Calf Bar. He's happy for them. Sorry to leave them.
Yeah. They're good. I like Calf Bar.
Yeah, fabulous. Great coffee.
Yeah. But they won't have that outdoor space.
No, I think they're doing something in the back, Joanne. They seem to, that they want to put a deck back there.
Oh, good.
I think that's everything.
What happened with the marijuana place?
Which one?
The state has not issued licenses.
They
So
have,
nothing has happened.
Yeah.
good.
They have to have their lottery first,
Right.
and that's fallen into McKee's lap. So they have to do that, and then whoever wins, that will be the spot of the 9 spots in town that are looking for it.
9 spots in town?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of spots. I don't know whether it's
I don't
9.
know, 7,
Four.
9.
I think it's 4, not
I
9.
think it's
There are
4.
a large number.
There's a lot of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
4.
4 potential locations, not 4
Yeah, it would only be one if
at the most.
if it even gets picked in South Kingstown, because
Yeah.
It could be westerly, so.
Right. So that's not determined yet. Anything else? It's 9:09. I'm 9 minutes beyond my bedtime.
Well, it's a good meeting though.
Oh, yeah. I think we came out the way we needed to.
Yeah,
I'm pleased with the outcome.
good.
And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Right? So moved and moved. Susan, you, Joanne, and Brian plan on going to,
Yeah,
and I'll be there as well because I know Dave. and we'll make sure that they go. I'll talk to Dave. I'll see him on the street.
Yeah, I mean, we might not need to go if all they're going to do is elect somebody.
Yeah, why don't we just send an email to Dave and say, who would you like to be on
Yeah.
the committee?
Yeah, just let them elect somebody. Meanwhile, we'll get, I was already thinking we'll get together, we'll set up a schedule with Randy as soon as they tell us who their people are.
Yeah.
And get moving. We've already had a couple of meetings with Randy, but they were a couple months ago, so we need to put
Yeah.
more pressure on him.
Joanne, you want to send the email?
Yeah, because I sent him that Parks and Recreation webinar. If anybody else wants it, I'll be happy to share it with
You know, I watched it too, and Galen Krantz, who was the first person he mentioned, the guy mentioned as one of his mentors, is a very old friend of mine. She and I taught at
Wow.
Princeton.
you. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. How many years ago was that, Susan?
Oh, we won't mention that too specifically. 1968, something like that. Ooh, man.
And you were teaching then?
I was teaching, yeah.
Oh, you could have had me
You
for a
weren't,
tutor.
Susan, you weren't on Rob's 150 list that he had, so don't worry.
I think the oldest was 104, I think, was our oldest.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
How'd you get their phone numbers?
Off the voter registration list or off of the state's special needs emergency list.
Yeah, there's that emergency list for people in
Great
a
job.
hurricane who need to be.
All right, folks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Adjourned.
Good night,
Well,
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Susan and Brian, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
you doing, Brian?
There we go. How you doing, Jamie?
Not too bad, Brian. Don't forget to stream.
It's ready to go. If
Brian, I'm going to stay muted for the whole meeting, and you may see me drop off video, but I'll be listening in case there's anything that comes up. But really want to
okay.
listen to what council talks about tonight.
Well, I told Andy he didn't need to be here until 6 so that we could try and take care of at least the certificate of appropriateness. Oh, speak of the
I was
devil.
going to say, Andy, it's Andy.
Hello. Apparently my video is still disabled.
Hi, Andy.
You need to enable my video. It says host
do I?
disabled.
I will.
Andy, we like the UTR symbol with the anchor and everything. It's a good logo.
Well, thank you.
All right. Assuming everybody else was having the same problem, that should have cleared it up for everybody.
Huh, okay.
There we go.
All right.
And I'm gonna start recording. So whenever you're ready there, Richard, and I'll let in Mr. Grote.
Is Andrew Martinez available at all?
I do not see him. I did not hear from him saying that he would not be able to make it, so I do expect him. So we can give him another minute or two.
Yeah, oh, here he comes. Good. All right. Andrew's here, so I think we can call the meeting to order if you're all ready.
Okay.
Let's call the meeting to order. It is 5:31 p.m. on February 4th, 2021. Calling the meeting of the South Kingstown Historic District Commission to order. We'll have a roll call, and I'll read the names and you can say here to acknowledge your presence. Andrew Martinez.
Here.
Linda Stedman.
Here.
Karen De Silva.
Here.
Shantia Underhagen.
Here.
And Richard Youngkin. I'm here speaking. So I think we have all of our members in attendance. Is that correct?
All of our active members, correct?
Yes, all of our active members. So I think we can move on to item 3, which is the approval of the minutes. The draft minutes for our December 9th, 2020 meeting, I think were mailed out to you. Do we have any comments? Any corrections? And I may call on you individually, just so we're sure that the record's clear that you have none. Karen? Do you have any comments on the minutes? No?
Hello, Richard. This is Andy Tights. Can I make a suggestion?
Certainly.
Just if you had a motion to approve the minutes and seconded, and then for these simple motions, what I suggest boards do is you ask if there's anyone opposed. And then if there's no one opposed, then you've got it approved. Obviously, when you're actually, reviewing something or granting or denying something, you'd have a roll call vote. But that seemed to work well for the minutes to keep things like that, to keep things moving quickly.
Well, we just want to make sure that if anybody has any corrections, we're able to say that. So why don't we move on?
So
there
I'll
any-
make a motion to approve the minutes then.
All right, is there a second for that?
I'll second.
So the motion is put forward and seconded. Do we have a vote? I'll call the roll call. I don't think there's any discussion. Karen De Silva,
Aye.
Linda Stedman,
Aye.
Andrew Martinez,
Aye.
Shantia Underhagen,
Aye.
Richard Youngkin, aye. I think we can move on to, we have a bit of a deadline here. The staff is going to have to leave at 7, and we want to get Andy Tights on board to talk to us fairly quickly. So I think what we might do is take the correspondence, if it's okay with the rest of the commission, and move it to after old business or later into the agenda. Is that okay with everybody? Just move ahead. So that allows us to go to new business. And I think what we might do is take the certificate of appropriateness first and move on with that right away, and then take Andy after that. So we'll switch A and B if that's okay with the rest of the commission. Anybody object to that?
Nope.
All right, I think we're all in favor of doing that. So we'll take on the certificate of appropriateness, item 5B at 2854 Kingstown Road, Assessor's Plat 23-3, Lot 29. This is an application by David Grote, and he is here. Thank you for attending, David. And I just want to say a few things in advance, and it's mainly to give us a historical context. This is a Matthew Waite house dating from 1819 and possibly earlier. It's a 2.5-story structure with a large brick center chimney, that center entryway. There's some colonial revival elements, I think, on it. The house was improved by the Eddy family in the early 1900s, 1910 or so. So it's a very important house in the district and has a lot of original intact features, and some features that probably got modified over time. Mr. Grote's application is before us, and he is coming before us for new siding, well, actually, excuse me, painting of the siding and repair and finishing of the siding for painting, a new roof, and which is very important, I believe, because of leakage that already is occurring, and shutter repair. He will also be doing some vegetative clearing, and those are really the major items before us. But let's hear from Mr. Grote and for his application.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's an interesting time, to be sure. Yeah, so I've owned the house since about 2012. It's a rental property. I lived out in Maryland My wife is active duty Navy physician here at Walter Reed Bethesda. I lived in Rhode Island for many years. I like historic properties. One of the reasons I bought the house. I like 18th century and early 19th century properties. I've restored some in the past. But the house needs a lot of work. And it's definitely time to do it. But immediately I have a leak, active leak in the attic. It's around the center chimney, and the roof is at the end of its useful life, so it's the right time to change the roof. So that was the first thing on my list there. The proposed roof will be, I think, an improvement from an architectural perspective. I'm going with a CertainTeed landmark architectural shingles in a weathered wood color. So I think it'll look a lot more like the wooden shakes that would have been on the house originally than what's currently on there, which are just basic asphalt shingles. In addition, it needs some pruning, some brush clearing and cutting of ivy that's growing up the side of the house, that sort of thing. In preparation for painting. Just proposing to remove some dead branches and some minor landscape cleanup. Would not be removing any large trees or hedges, just some general TLC. The next thing is repair and rehang existing wooden shutters. You can see from the pictures I attached to the application, one of the shutters is kind of hanging off. They all need a little bit of TLC. Would not be replacing them. Would just be repairing them, and then rehanging them, remounting them, and then repair and fill where required on the siding, existing wooden siding. You might have to replace some slats or some wood here and there, but for the most part, just keep what's there. And I was just repainting it in the same colors as currently is. Basically, it's white with black shutters. And so I'd just be matching the colors. I don't know exactly what color white it is or what color black it is, but the plan is to match what's there. If there's some historic evidence that can tell me that a different color would be better for the house, I'm open to it. But my plan was to just paint what's there. And then the last thing, which I don't think impacts this group because it doesn't change anything on the exterior of the house. I just wanted to add it on the list. I also unfortunately need to replace the boiler, which is in the basement. There won't be any exterior changes to the house from that replacement. But that's one other thing that I'm doing there. So that's basically it. And the timeline for this is hopefully I'll be doing this over the next few weeks. Obviously, you can't do exterior painting until it gets a little warmer, but that's my plan. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Grout. That's a great summary. Just for your information, we do not have jurisdiction over paint colors or the coloration of shutters or the siding of the building. We are concerned that they be coated in some way, painted, but the color is really your choice. Okay. And you're right about the interior, the boiler and whatnot. We don't have jurisdiction over that as well.
Right.
So I think with that presentation, I'll open it up for questions from the commission. And we have questions. Anybody on the commission?
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew, thank you.
Will you be resurfacing the roof of that portico over the front door there? That
yes, it will be part of the resurfacing. The part which won't be, which you can't really see very well, there's a flat section of the roof in the rear off the kitchen L. There's a peak section of the kitchen L, and then there's a flat section. That flat section I did in 2012. It's not visible to the exterior at all. That front porch will be done.
And when the roofing is done, do you think the gutters will end up being replaced as well, or?
I'm hoping, I didn't have plans to replace the gutters. So I didn't
Okay.
think about that when I put it on the thing, but yeah, I didn't have plans to replace it. I think what's on there now is just aluminum gutters.
Mhm.
What's on the roof now? It looks like it's asphalt shingles.
I'm
but
sorry.
What's on the roof now? Is it asphalt shingles? Okay.
Yeah, they're not, they're pretty basic asphalt shingles. They're not, they don't even attempt to look like shakes or anything. So this will definitely be a nice improvement.
Shanti, you have a
Yeah.
question?
I have a question. First of all, it's a nice plan to see someone come in with good maintenance going on. That's appreciated. The chimney flashing, taking a look at the chimney. Generally, when you get a roof done, you often will get the chimney flashing done at the same
Yes, yeah.
time. Is that part of the plan?
Yes, it is. It will be LED flashing.
Okay.
So.
Rich, are we just asking questions now, or can we make comments and suggestions?
I think you can make comments as you
Okay.
ask questions. We'll get into a motion pretty soon, I think.
Okay, so I appreciate all this work. I would make the suggestion that the color of the shingles match what you have there now, a charcoal or a black, because generally I appreciate the inclination to have your new roof look like wood shakes, but in fact, they end up looking like asphalt that is trying to look like wood oftentimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. You know, we're used to looking at asphalt roofing on buildings, on historic buildings, and I think
Yeah.
just a good charcoal, not even a deep black, but a charcoal gray would be a better choice, and
Okay.
would that's my suggestion again.
So the color that I picked out is kind of a darker brown. It's a weathered wood, I think. I don't know if you see it in the package.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with these shingles. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would go toward one of the charcoal darker grays rather than a brown, because they don't end up looking like wood roofs. They just look like brown asphalt roofs.
Okay.
And other commissioners may have comments on that as well. And then my only other comment was to just encourage you to be very careful with the siding repairs. Although I don't think these are original clapboards, they look to me to be a little bit later, but making sure you're not using heat guns or rotary sanders, and just being gentle with your prep, good prep, but gentle.
Okay.
Again, it's a little bit probably outside of our purview, but just a suggestion that there are lots of preservation briefs online that can point your contractor to the appropriate approach to a historic building.
Okay.
So we have a comment from Brian. So your hand up, Brian.
Yeah, just to work off of what Shantia just said, I would direct David to look at the standards and guidelines when it does talk about surface preparation for paint and using gentle methods, staying away from aggressive methods like sandblasting and stuff like that, in order to preserve as much of the original material as you can and not damage the surface.
Okay.
Insofar as the roof goes, the regulations are clear that a straight exchange asphalt for asphalt shouldn't be a problem. I understand, I haven't handled all that many of these reviews, but I got the call from Mr. Grote, and he was anxious to get the roof repaired because it was leaking, and I had the availability to put him on the agenda, so I did. But after some further reading, it appears to me that what he's asking to do really falls into the routine maintenance category. There are no aesthetic or visual changes being made to the house. It's paint and a new roof. And in hindsight, I think that this is something that would have gone through a lesser review on a applicability determination rather than a full certificate of appropriateness.
I think Brian is correct in large degree. This is a wonderful, thank you, Mr. Grote, for this wonderful maintenance project. The building is overdue for it, and we're very pleased that you're going to go ahead with this. But it is the kind of thing that can be done administratively. And that is with regard to the fact that you are suggesting that you're not going to be changing anything. You're going to be using best practice on the painting, the preparation for the painting. The building does have a lot of architectural features that are detailed in terms of the moldings and the raking boards to the roof, the window trim, the cornice work, the door surrounds. There's the splayed lintels over the windows. There's a lot going on this building. It's very interesting because it's painted white. You don't see a lot of it unless you get up close to it. I think Shanti is correct in the assessment of the clapboards. They seem to be maybe more recent, and they do get repaired and replaced over time. But I think you're assuring us, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're going to be paying particular attention to all those details. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, I
So the standards, the applicable standards that we're operating under in our standards and guidelines are the standards 4, 6, 7, and 8. And then the more detailed guidelines 23, 31 through 33, and 35. Primarily 35 has to deal with the roof, the replacement in kind with asphalt. I think Shanti's pointed out some just a method for you maybe to simplify and save some money. But the color choice is really your choice. But I think replacement in kind is what you're considering. And then the prep work and all that's described, as Brian has said, in our standards and guidelines, you might want to look at very carefully and advise your contractor. So I think, are there any more comments or anything, any questions of the applicant that are coming before us from the commission?
I guess the only question I would have for you is just, it's hard to tell on some of these pictures, but to Richard's point about as you embark on this project and you discover, like I'm looking at one window, I can't tell if that's mildew or if that's like a quizzical molding above a window that might have a crack in it. So I guess as you're going through those repairs and the standards, right, of keeping materials in kind.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at page 6. It's the picture with the shutter that's hanging off, but it's the window to the right.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have any, and I would come back if I needed to make any changes to windows or anything like that. But I have no plans to do anything like that.
Yeah, I was talking about the molding around the window. That's all.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's the wood around. It's the.
There's quite a bow to that wall. It's bent out quite a bit on that wall. And so it's pretty interesting. I haven't, because of COVID, I haven't been to the property in a year and a half. So I'm relying somewhat on my contractor and my contractor's pictures. So.
I think if you have any repair to make on that wall, then you'll have to come back to us with a specific application.
I had a lot of structural work done in 2012 and by an expert in 18th century construction, and it's stable. Obviously we need to fix the roof, but the house isn't going anywhere. It's just nothing's level or square. So,
Well, let me say one thing before we go into our motion. I don't know if you all noticed in the commission that the shutters are old shutters that look like they at one time could be operated.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you realize this, but they're actually on the building the correct way, where the shutter, the moving pieces are exposed. That means
Yeah.
that would happen when you open them. So many of our houses, they've reversed them and
Oh,
put them
okay.
on backwards. So we very much hope that when you take them off and paint them and put them back on,
Yeah.
that somehow they get numbered, number one, and number two,
Yeah.
you put them on the same way they are now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure that they do that.
Right. So do we have now I hope all of you paid attention to the various things that have been discussed. Do we have a motion from a commission member for this application? Anyone willing to make a motion?
I'll try. Let's see. I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness at 2854 Kingstown Road, Assessor's Plat 23-3, Lot 29, for asphalt roof replacement, exterior sidewall cleaning and repainting, reflashing of the chimney. And Andrew, you added something. I'm sorry to have to ask, but there was something you asked about that.
It's pruning and yeah, the landscape maintenance.
I think Andrew's addition was about the porch roof to make sure that
That's
was
right.
included.
Okay, so re-roofing the main house and the front porch
Yeah.
And repairing the shutters.
and
Yeah,
repairing and reinstalling the shutters as they currently exist. I think that's the end of my motion, my
Yeah.
proposed motion.
Before we have a second, I want to say that we want to add into this motion the standards and guidelines that we have cited. Do you want me to read those out again?
Yes, those are, thanks, Rich. I didn't write the numbers. I'm sorry.
It's quite a roll call. It's 4, 6, 7, 8, 23, 31 through 33, and 35. There's quite a range here because we're talking about a number of things on the building. Also, that we want to approve his project as it's described in his application. We want that mentioned. I think that covers it. Brian, do you have any other items that?
No, I think you covered it all.
All right. So do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right, let's have a vote by roll call. Karen De Silva,
Aye.
Linda Stedman,
Aye.
Andrew Martinez,
Aye.
Shanti Andrehagen,
Aye.
and Richard Youngkin, aye. So the ayes have it. We've approved a certificate of appropriateness for your project, Mr. Grote. So thank you very much. And with that, I think we've dealt with that end of the business on the agenda. And
Thank you very much.
thank you. And
Thank
good
you.
luck on your project.
All right. Thank you. All right.
We should be able to move on to the next item, which is our discussions with Mr. Tights. So I guess we need to unmute you.
You can unmute himself.
I can unmute myself. I've just been
Good.
muted in the background and I hear the garage door opening. My wife's coming home. I may have to put the headphones on. Except they're Bluetooth, and the last time I did that, I like somehow disconnected. Going to the Bluetooth headphones disconnected the entire Zoom from my connection. Anyway, so we'll try it without it.
Well,
Go ahead.
how much have you been given in terms of our items for questions? Or do you have any background that you need from us about why you're here, why you're in front of us?
No, I thought I was just the victim du jour.
No, after some of our previous discussions, I thought it might be helpful, and I think it's always a good idea on sort of a regular basis to have legal counsel step in and refresh board members' minds about the extent of the board's responsibilities and authorities, just as a general case. And then, Richard, you forwarded me some additional questions arising out of the cottage zoning issue in terms of the relationship between the historic district and the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
So I think, as you know, I have a lot of experience with historic district representation. In fact, that's why I have to leave at 7:02. The Bristol Historic District Commission is meeting tonight. It's their monthly meeting. So I need to be there to represent them. I think it's been about a decade or maybe more since you last called on me. I guess you're doing a good job. If you're not calling for a lawyer to be present at the meetings, then I assume things are running smoothly. I have been aware of what's going on with the zoning, the cottage zoning and whatnot, and the issues, as was just said by Brian. And I did want to basically be available to answer your questions and discussion about that. I think the first question, that I do know was about what would prevail, the historic district versus if this new cottage zoning was in. That's a kind of simple question, but beyond that, I'm here for your questions and to discuss it. Some of you, well, Richard, I'm also a planner too, in addition to the lawyer part. So I'm happy to discuss these things. And if there's any other questions about procedure or historic district jurisdiction and stuff, I'm available tonight until 7. And of course, in general, in the future, if you need to call on me, that's part of our job.
Well, thanks, Andy. And I think I want to sort of lead off with the discussion and then have other board members come in. One of the things that the cottage zoning sort of brought up in my mind, and I think in other commission members' minds, is exactly that question about the underlying zoning, and how does our jurisdiction sort of influence that, or vice versa. And it had been my experience for many years with this kind of work that we really couldn't bother too much with what exists in the underlying zone in terms of dimensional regulations, use limitations, and other parameters that the underlying zone sets up. Our niche in terms of an overlay district is really all about the exterior appearance of the buildings. And it was my understanding that we don't go very much beyond that, except we can now look at landscape features, historic landscape features. And those are things that we are not small planting beds and that of that nature. They're primary sort of structural things in the landscape, as well as historic trees or specimen trees. So with that as a preamble, Andy, I think the big question for you from me is to sort of straighten us out a little bit on what is it about the underlying zone that's sort of untouchable from our perspective, and what are the things that we can have jurisdiction over in the underlying zone?
Okay, and that's a good question. I think first let's talk about what you don't have jurisdiction over, which would be the use. and anything that's going on inside any of the existing structures on the property. So for example, and I know this is one of the future things, and we might get to it tonight or not, but this idea of whatever we're calling the mansion housing, the idea of allowing, existing large structures to be used for multiple family dwellings. As long as there's no change to the exterior, then you wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that at all. What you do have is jurisdiction over the requirements on the dimensional stuff and what's allowed with structures and buildings. And if you think about it, it's kind of the same thing now. If someone came in, I don't even know, I don't think you have any vacant lots in there, but whatever.
We do.
Okay. So if someone came in and, wanted to build a building that you thought was out of scale and out of character with the district, or significantly so, even if they somehow managed to meet the setbacks or managed to get a variance from the zoning board, you would still have the ability to deny that. You'd obviously have to make the appropriate findings of fact and referring to the neighboring structures and why it's out of character and scale with it. But you would have that authority even now. That's the point. You're a classic overlay zone that imposes stricter requirements than the underlying zone.
Can I interrupt you just for a minute, Andy?
Yep.
Just on that question. If for instance, and I think we had this in the past, the setback requirement was greater than the building line, and we wanted the building at the building line.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was only a few feet, but that required the developer or the person building the house to go to the zoning board and ask for a variance so that they could build the house closer to the street than the setback required. So we would have preferred that they build it at the setback line. He was fortunate to get, at the building line. He was fortunate to get the zoning board dimensional variance to do so. But had he not received that, we could not have gone any further than that. In other words, it would have been at the underlying zoning setback line. Is that correct?
That's correct. You have to respect that as well. And you don't have the power to vary the underlying zoning other than to make it stricter, like I was saying, but you can't make it looser, which is technically what's going on in that case. Where if there's, a 10-foot front yard, you don't have the ability to grant it to say 0 right up to the street line.
Yeah.
That's really more for, either as said, you go to the zoning board, or you go to the how the zoning ordinance is written, and write it so that the setbacks in this district should be less. I think we've done a lot of that over time. We tried to, both with downtown Wakefield and so forth in general, establish zoning that's more in keeping with the New England village urban feel of reducing those front yard setbacks. And I think we also have, language in there now about the average of the neighboring properties as well, to try to bring buildings closer to the street.
I'm sorry that interrupted you.
No,
Please
that's
continue.
okay. I guess I was getting to the same idea. So if we had something with cottage zoning that provided for, developing multiple small structures on a property, you would still be able to deny it if you thought, again, for example, if it was too dense, even though it might be allowed by the underlying zoning to have 6 cottages on this particular lot, and you're looking at it and thinking it's overly dense, particularly if you're adding cottages to an existing building where there's a lot where there's an existing building or whatnot, and you would have the ability to deny it, notwithstanding the underlying cottage zoning. Now, I think, you know, the immediate problem is solved because the historic district has been removed from the ordinance on the cottage zoning. It's just going to say not applicable in the historic district. But if it were going forward or something similar, you would still have the final say on that aspect of it.
How about the placement of the cottage, the sort of open space requirement?
Absolutely.
Interesting. Now, in terms of the, I guess our sense of wanting to do something with cottage, that kind of concept, in other words, have something available for affordable housing that would allow us to maybe use the existing dwellings as some of the density, because many of them already have affordable units in them. How would that, I mean, I think we're thinking about perhaps crafting a whole new applicable kind of zoning. Maybe that's the mansion type zoning. I don't know, that would help us with this. But, and that's, where would that start? Would that start with the Historic District Commission really beginning to set standards and guidelines that would help us review projects, help us more than our existing standards and guidelines do for that kind of change over?
Well, I mean, first of all, you got really, you have very good standards and guidelines. Your guidebook is very detailed and very well written. Just coincidence, Richard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I think you've got that there. I mean, it's really working. You got Brian here, and you got Jamie on the Zoom too. I think working. You're very lucky in South Kingstown to have a substantial and skilled planning department with the resources, and I think working with them as far as in crafting it. What I see is, if the changes are being made to the underlying zoning to allow the increased density and whatnot, probably what you're going to be looking at is things like adding extra entrances and extra parking and things like that. That's probably what's going to come on that sort of thing. If we're not talking about cottages, but just the existing houses and increasing their density, that's probably the factors that you would be wanting to look at. And I don't know, I mean, I think you pretty well handle them as it is. I don't know, how much more you do to it.
Well, I think what we would, maybe more so in terms of the outbuildings that exist, thinking about conversions of carriage barns and sheds and other outbuildings, and maybe even the building of new outbuilding type structures, not necessarily little cottages, but maybe more outbuildings. Maybe there's historical evidence for some that existed that are now gone that could be rebuilt, and they could be units, they could be additional units, provided the density worked on the land.
Right, absolutely. And you would have that authority. I mean, if someone came in and they just wanted to build something plain and whatnot, or incongruous with it, you can say no. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be either ideally if there were some historical evidence, or if not, we don't want to have slavish devotion, so we have conjecturalism, but we do want the styles to reflect. This is approximately where, and the massing and what, if there had been a carriage house there, what it would have looked like type thing. And that's certainly within your purview to determine. And, that comes into play. You haven't had it yet, but, one of the things is a comprehensive permit, which is under the state law for low and moderate income housing. Which is where someone comes in, and if they're going to provide 25% of the units to be low and moderate income housing, they can apply under this comprehensive permit, which is one-stop shopping before the planning board. Unfortunately, in that instance, you don't have a jurisdictional review. Your review is going to be advisory to the planning board. as to the historic aspects of it.
Who grants the permit in that case? Is it granted by a state board?
No, it's granted by the planning board. It's subject to appeal to the state board, the State Housing Appeals Board, or SHAB as we call it.
But the ultimate authority is the town's planning board in approving it?
The initial authority, yes, is the planning board. Yep.
Is there any other state authority that approves it?
Only the regular state authorities, DEM, CRMC, DOT, etc. They still have their own regulatory authority.
So the Preservation Commission has a regulatory authority?
The State Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission,
Yeah.
not by virtue of the comp permit. They wouldn't. That's what I'm saying. So, for example, I mean, if someone needed a curb cut, then they would go to DOT. They need a physical alteration permit. If the property happened to be, let's say the property happened to be on the waterfront, because I did deal with this with a historic funeral home in Westerly, and the CRMC jurisdiction actually runs up all the river all the way up there in between the Pawcatuck line in the middle of the river and the Westerly shore. And so consequently there, the CRMC had jurisdiction, so the State Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission had jurisdiction pursuant to that. But they don't get any special jurisdiction because of the comprehensive permit, no.
Okay, good. Do we have any questions from board members, commission members for Andy?
I actually do have a question, and I should know this, but I don't, having been staff to the Newport Preservation Commission, Historic District Commission. So going back to the previous application, Andy, I guess what concerns me is the interpretation of in kind, because although I don't think the Secretary of the Interior's standards or the guidelines or the Park Service define in kind as identical, but I think in practice, that's generally what we mean when we talk about in kind. And so I think, and I understand the issue of color as well, except I guess the intersection of in kind and color and those asphalt shingles. Can you explain to me? Because that in fact would be a dramatic aesthetic change. And in kind talks about retaining the aesthetic.
Sure.
So how is it that the interpretation of in kind can't include the color of the shingle?
Okay.
Roof shingle.
It can. So there's two separate things here. One, I just want to say, because I don't want to lose this thought, is with in kind, I do think it's very important to make it clear to people that in kind means exact. I've had trouble with that. People said, oh, I had a wood door. I said inclined replacement. I replaced it with a wood door, even though it's nothing like the 1850s 3-panel door is now replaced by a Home Depot 8-panel door, but it's wood, so I thought it was okay. So that is important. Or, I replaced the mahogany decking with pressure treated. It's both wood. Why are you giving? So that's important up front. To answer your more subtle question on the color, my interpretation of this has been, and I don't know that it's actually anywhere in the state law or whatnot, but my interpretation is, if the color is integral to the material, then it comes under your jurisdiction.
Okay.
If it's simply a coating, then it's something that's reversible and temporary, and it doesn't. So therefore, for shingles, you do have authority over what color shingles they put up there. Okay. And that's why I often like to see samples. If it's just paint, then no, they want to paint it bright purple and pink, they can do that. And then in the middle, we have things, I'm trying to remember, there was a big push for a while for that coating. I can't think of the trade name of the coating, but it was like a paint, but it was actually like a heavy epoxy that they would bond into the wood.
Yeah. Something, I think zebra coating, something like that.
Maybe, I don't know. We had to come up and,
yeah, that's right. Rhino. I know. It was an animal.
Yep, that's it. And my distinction there was, no, that's not paint, that is bonding with the wood, that's becoming a permanent thing. And so we've got jurisdiction over the coating itself, and we've got jurisdiction over the color.
Okay.
Or where we've had some new structures go in where they were using, it was a new building, so they were using an artificial, like a manufactured wood product or a concrete type thing,
Yeah.
that the color was part of it. Said, okay, if the color is part of it, then we have jurisdiction over the color. So that's the line that I draw on it.
Okay, that's really
That's
helpful.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. That's really good.
Yeah.
All right. So are there any other questions from the commission members? Anybody? Karen, Andrew, Linda? Any further questions for Andy?
None for me.
You're all set. All right, Brian, then you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question out of curiosity for Andy in talking about comprehensive permits and SHAB. Has SHAB generally been supportive of historic preservation?
No.
No. Okay. I mean, when it's put in a position where it's making a choice between creating affordable housing units or preserving a historic piece of architecture, are they opt against the architecture?
I have to say that they haven't had that. They haven't had that a lot. That dichotomy has not been presented to them that often. On a recent still pending case in East Greenwich, where that was an issue, they didn't rule on that issue so much because in the end, the Historic District Commission advisory opinion had sort of caved in to concede to the possibility of demolition. But I would just say from the tenor of the discussion and the decision, I don't think they gave it a lot of consideration. So now, as it turns out, we've reached, depending on what happens in court Monday, we've reached a settlement to go on to the next stage where they've reduced the density, and they are in fact going to reconstruct this house. And I've got the Historic District Commission maintaining it's basically by agreement will continue to have some control over it. But to answer your overall question, I don't think if push came to shove, I don't think SHAB would be sympathetic with the historic element as compared to the housing needs.
And one other comment that I would add with the earlier discussions about getting into the next phase of our housing changes when we start looking into larger multi-unit structures like manor houses and subdividing units. I think we will definitely be submitting material to the Historic District Commission for review and comment, because that is going to be a form factor for housing that we will be much more realistically expecting to possibly see in the historic district, possibly with some of its larger structures falling into the category of being subdivided. Certainly, a lot of them are already used for that purpose now. So yes, we would definitely be looking for your input on how something like that would be implemented in the historic district.
Well, that's a nice segue to my last question, and that had to do with any other board or commission developing architectural design standards for the historic district. So, Andy, what is your view on that? My view is, and you can take exception to this, of course, is that the Historic District Commission is really the only body that can do that for our historic district under the enabling law. We can't have the planning board doing that, for example.
Yeah, I guess I do take exception to it. I think, as I said, because, you know, if someone came in with a comp permit, you'd already be cut out of it by state law. You know, I think I seem to recall somewhere back in the distant past, I think I was with you on, because that was a question, someone was subdividing a lot and how they were going to subdivide the lot horizontal, you know, which way they were going to do it. And that was just the question, the intersection between the planning's role over the subdivision and the Historic District Commission. And I know I found that the Historic District Commission had it, even if planning approved it, if Historic said no, they weren't able to do it, was my opinion on that. And I would still do it. So I don't think you're the exclusive one. Obviously, as a practical matter, it's not really good to have conflicting ones. I think, you know, as Brian was saying, the thing to do is, you know, to be involved in the drafting of them so that you agree mutually up front, these are the standards for the historic district that apply across the board. And I think that would be helpful too, as I think about the dangers of a comprehensive permit application. I think that would be, you know, would be better if it's only the historic district and then your historic district review is only advisory to them. It would actually be better if it were right up there in the land development and subdivision regulations and part of the planning development review of the comp permit to begin with.
Right.
That would strengthen them if you had one set of unified design review regulations.
So let me ask you this last question about the comprehensive permit. We're still going to be threatened by the comprehensive permit, aren't we, until the town reaches its mandated quota of affordable housing. There's no, if you have cottage zoning or if you have mansion zoning or if you have other affordable opportunities in our regs, we're still susceptible to comprehensive permit threats until we reach our threshold. Is that true?
I don't know. I think, you know, perhaps threats are too strong a word, but challenges certainly that you're subject to. But the more that you can do to have these things in place, because that allows you to show that you treat affordable and market rate developments the same. If you have these regs in place and you apply it to a market rate unit in January, and then someone comes in with a low and moderate income housing comp permit in June, and you apply it and they scream and they, oh, it's not fair, you're applying it to me and you're being unreasonable, and they appeal it. It helps us a lot to be able to defend it and say, no, this is what applies to everybody. And we're not just trying to keep those people out. We are in fact applying this across the board. So, you know, can you be 100% protected? No, but you can't be, as we've learned in the last year, you can't be 100% protected against anything.
Sort of like a vaccine that works 50-50.
Exactly. Well, no, we're looking for the booster here to bring us up to 90%.
90%. Okay, good. Well, I think if, you know, I don't know if I want to speak on behalf of the other board members, but I think we're all really interested in improving the situation and working in the historic district to have affordable housing and to get our affordable housing that we do have working well. I mean, I think we're very concerned, sort of underlying. You can see our current properties, some of them are not in great condition. Some of them seem to be, you know, overly, maybe there are too many units in them. We don't really know what's going on with some of them. The Kingston Inn, for instance, I looked at the parking lot and realized that this parking lot has like 25 cars. And I wondered in my head, because we don't have jurisdiction over that interior, but I wondered in my head what's going on inside there. How small are the units? What's that all about? I mean, I think it's wonderful to have student housing in Kingston. And I think it's wonderful to have, it will be wonderful to have student housing for young professors and postgrads and graduate students. That will work. And we don't want to discourage that. We want to make it work. We think that because there's design review of the architecture in Kingston, actually for many people, I don't think the place is really, I don't think people realize how much housing exists there, how much opportunity exists there, because it all fits in so well on the exterior at the moment. I think design review actually helps that condition and can help it into the future. Anyway, that's a lot of grandstanding. Forgive me. Anybody else have any comments from the commission? Any comments, Brian? I know Jamie's hanging out there too, so.
Jamie, I think it was just going to observe, but he may chime in on some of this. I think to the questions and concerns about the comprehensive permit, one of the things we can do to avoid that, which is partly what we're trying to do with some of these design exercises, is to create more attractive alternatives for developers where we can maintain a little bit more control over the design process than the comprehensive permit situation.
Right.
So if we can present them, for example, in the historic district, with a scheme for creating mansion type zoning, that they can make work at a good profit margin for them without having to fight with the town over a comprehensive permit, it helps them and it helps us get what we want.
Right. Jamie, did you have any comments?
Yep, Ms. Chucky, if I can, just a couple of things, observations in the discussion, which I think is great and wonderful. It gives insight to us as staff to the town. But to your discussion on mansion houses and, is there an appropriate form that could work in the historic district? In my discussions with Horsley Witten and Union Studios, which we're going to continue tomorrow, I think some of the things we're going to produce in the next round of kind of regulatory review is we're going to look harder at the built form and less at the words. And if we can get commonality and agreement on the built form, we have smart people and very smart attorneys like Andy that we can write the words to help to steer the result. A lot of times you write words without really clearly understanding what the outcome is from those words that are written. I think that's probably one of the things I brought to the table on the cottage regulations, that you wrote this regulation and it's very dimensionally based. Do you have any idea what the unit's going to look like when someone applies? And they're like, well, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be 18 feet tall and no more than 1,200 square feet, but you don't have a single architectural standard associated with your dimensional code. So we're trying to flip it on its head a little bit and say, let's work on the intended outcome as a somewhat known and predictable product and work backwards to the words that hopefully will create a product that the town can be proud of. And I think you mentioned a good point. Is there a possibility in the historic district where maybe you have, main house, back house, barn? That could be a threeplex. But when you drove by it, you would have no idea that it's a threeplex because it's going to look like a main house, back house, barn, which would be perfectly appropriate in South Kingston as it would be in Lexington or Concord, Massachusetts.
Right.
Because you drive down certain areas on Route 2 and there's just 60 of them in a row. And that's what was built when, you had the main house and then the summer kitchen or connection from the barn to the house. And that became something else over time when you didn't need a summer kitchen or you didn't need a birthing room anymore. And now that secondary back house becomes a kitchen or it becomes a study. And can you use that form, that architectural historic form, and make it appropriate for a threeplex? I think, the look of an outbuilding. Can you have a main house with a detached carriage barn that has 2 units with it? only thing that's complicated between the historic nature of those buildings and those buildings in a modern time, and you touched upon it, Richard, is the car. Right?
Right.
Because with the threeplex, potentially become, 6 cars plus 2 to 4 guest parking. And now where do you put 10 parking spaces and the turnaround movements and everything associated with what used to be a single family home with a horse and a carriage. And now we're introducing 10 vehicles. That's probably the complicated aspect of it.
Well,
That's what we're gonna try and do.
Yeah, Jamie, I'd encourage the planning, both of you guys, the planning department, to actually do like a case study in Kingston and look at it really carefully, because I think the clues are there. We do have several big houses that are threeplexes, and then we have some what look like outbuildings in back, and they're parking in back. You wonder if you could put 2 more units in maybe an outbuilding and it would work. But you, as you said, Jamie, you have to actually get out there and almost draw it, do a site plan of it, think about it, do a model of it even, to try to think through how it could work, and then write the guidelines accordingly. I think that would be wonderful to have, to be able to think it through. We want to do that too with new infill construction. We've had several infill houses that we've approved. I'm not sure if the jury's back on success or not of those infill. We have a new one that is about to be built on South Road. Could those have been done better? Could those be done better with this kind of scenario as well? I don't know. The big questions for us. We'd also, of course, like to be advisory for those buildings that are listed or eligible for listing outside of Kingston, or within the other National Register districts like Usquepaugh, Peacedale, Wakefield. And, if there are scenarios that work better for them in this same kind of design philosophy, where we're really working with what exists and putting in the further contextual kind of elements that work with those properties. So all is good. Sounds encouraging. Sounds like you're thinking this through, and maybe Kingston is, kind of a nice setting to make those experiments. Kind of work on conjectural ideas and see how they work. I think Andy has Andy left already? No, he's still there.
No,
He's just
I'm
like,
still here.
he's in the bushes.
Sorry. Just leaning back.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. And I think what I want to encourage the commission members to do is to attend the workshop that's going to be at the Historical Preservation Conference this spring on how we should operate our meetings and how we review projects and standards and guidelines. Andy, you probably know all about that coming up. Are you participating in that too?
I don't know. I volunteered, but I haven't heard back yet.
Haven't heard from Sarah yet. So we'll get that out. Maybe we can get that out through Brian, the reminder. It's going to be online, and I think it's going to be easy to attend. And we'll have some great training. I think we all need that in the running of these meetings, and in our motions, and in how we proceed with our standards and guidelines. So that's to look forward to.
And I'm available as well as a resource. Just feed it through Brian if you've got other questions or whatnot.
Okay.
Send it through him, and I'm available.
Shanti, I think, has a question.
No, I just said it's April 21st.
April 21st is that meeting. That's the Preservation Commission conference where we'll have.
The conference is 21 to 23, but the first day is the commission training, I believe.
Commission. Okay, good. So guys, put that on your calendars if you've got the time. It'd be great to attend. All right, any more questions for Andy? I think we covered the bases. Thank you so much.
Okay, my pleasure. Keep doing
Thank you.
your good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, I think we can move on. Let me make sure I got the right agenda here. I'm not a great chairman because I shuffle papers too much and move things around.
So do you want to go back and breeze through the correspondence?
Yeah, I think that that's important that we do that, get that done, because it has to be recorded in our minutes.
Okay,
And
so,
then we'll move on to the election after that.
so as staff, I'll report in, we issued the certificate of appropriateness that you approved at the last meeting in December for 2590 Kingstown Road. We also had received a letter asking us whether we wanted to comment under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act regarding some telecom antennas on top of the Morrisfield Road water tower. The water tower itself is outside of the historic district. It is an existing structure. The antennas are on an existing structure. Our zoning ordinances strongly encourage the placement of antennas on existing structures. In fact, you are allowed to do it by right, because we would much prefer that than to see towers going up. The work that was being proposed was really just adding antennas, the bar antennas, the vertical bar antennas to the existing structure. They're not going to be going up, going out, expanding the dimensions of it at all. So they're going to be moving some of the existing antennas around to make some room and then putting some new antennas up there as well. So I issued a letter after determining that it really wasn't a matter for the historic district to consider, because the only thing you're given the authority to review is new structures going up within a fall radius of the historic district. I told them that we had no comment provided that they were not increasing the dimensional mass of the existing structure up there. I will note, in addition, I've received a similar letter from T-Mobile proposing to add a couple of more antennas up there. It appears to be the exact same kind of proposal. They're just hanging more antennas on the existing structure. It won't be taller, it won't be wider. And certainly we encourage co-location of antennas over the creation of new towers. So that's those two issues.
Are there any comments or questions from the board members about this?
No.
Everybody's okay? The, you know, as you know, the water tower is a bulbous kind of water tower, massive. It is screened by a great number of trees from Old North Road, and then from the heart of the district. The part of the district that sees the tower is really the eastern edge of the district on Kingstown Road, or Morrisfield Road, I think it is. It's sort of beyond, east of the intersection of 108 and 138. And I looked at it as well, and I thought that it's just adding on to an existing antenna array. And I guess now we're going to see more additions to that array, but it's right in the middle of the top of the bulb. So if you get underneath the water tower, you can't see it at all. You have to stand away from it a distance to see it even. So I think it is what it is. Thank you, Brian, for taking care of that.
Yep.
So I think the next item, we're going to shift back to number 5, new business, and the election of officers. I think this is overdue. There are only 5 of us now on the commission. We're hoping that there'll be at least 2 more members soon. I think we have had some applications. We're not quite sure about that, but we've heard about some applications. So with that, I'm not really comfortable continuing as the chairman. I don't mind being the vice chair, but I think that I talk too much and I'm not that effective. So anyway, I have a lot of personal things going on and I don't really have the time for it. So I hope that somebody else on the commission would like to fit in for the commission chair. Don't know how Andrew feels about continuing as a secretary. So you may want to say a few words about that, Andrew, if you're up for being a secretary again. You'll have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, I am happy to continue on in the role of secretary.
Or if there's another role you'd like to have.
I get your nudge, but I would like to continue on as secretary.
All right. And I was the vice chair. I can do that again, or maybe Shanti or Karen or any of you would like to do that. So maybe what we should do now is have nominations should we start at the top for the chair?
I'm gonna say I don't have the bandwidth to do this. My work day doesn't stop now until 7 at night. So there's no way I could take on additional. Sorry.
Okay. Right. Well, I'd like to make a nomination. I think I'd like to nominate Shanti for the vice chair's position. See if she'll take that.
I would do vice chair. I really would prefer not to start out as chair. I would feel too, I see we have a very small group and we have people who are overcommitted. I get it, but I don't feel ready to jump into chair, but I would happily do vice chair.
All right. So we have a partial slate now. How about Linda? Would you like to be the chair?
I physically cannot do that, not at this time.
Do it.
I wish I could. I just have too many irons in the fire and I don't think I'd be very effective at it.
Could Rich, could we, or maybe Brian, I don't know who can answer this. Could we elect officers for a shorter period of time? In other words, if we could convince Rich to serve as chair for 6 more months or 3 more months, or a shorter period of time to bridge while we get a member or 2 more and get a little more comfortable with the new composition and then figure it out?
Well, we are required to have annual elections for the positions, typically to serve the year. There would be 2 ways of dealing with that. We don't vote for a chair right now, and Rich or another volunteer would stand in as acting chair. The other way to handle it is to elect somebody as chair with the understanding that they might be looking to step down from that position mid-year. There's nothing preventing you from resigning your position as an officer and retaining your membership on the board.
Okay. So Rich, I guess I'd ask you if you would be comfortable serving at least through the May meeting as chair, and maybe we could revisit it then.
Yeah, I think
elect you as chair with the understanding that you may resign as chair after May or
I
or
may,
after August.
I may step down. Yeah, that would be fine. That sort of fits into my plans. I think I can take a few more months. Yes. All right.
It would give us a little breathing room, get a couple of additional members, and then all of us reconsider where we are in May or August
Right.
or whenever.
Okay. So I guess there's our slate. If somebody would make that nomination, that would be great for the slate. And then we'll have a vote.
I would nominate the slate as it's been presented, as Richard as president, Shantia as vice president, Andrew as secretary.
All right. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it. I've got a dog that's out of control right now. Sorry. She does not like Zoom calls that start at 7 in the morning and end at whenever at night. So sorry. Second, I'll
Right.
second that.
We have a second and Karen De Silva seconds. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So
Aye.
I think we're all in favor.
Thank you,
That'll
Rich.
work, Paul. All right, so we'll go with that for the moment. Moving on, we have, I think what we've decided to do is we've got our old business and we can maybe quickly go through that. The cottage zoning update, I think we've already given you, I don't know, Brian, have we covered that already? That was number 7.
Yeah, Andy sort of did that. Yeah, the only thing I was going to say there was that the decision was made to exempt the historic district from the cottage zoning so that would no longer be an option within the historic district. I think both Jamie and I stand with our conclusions that it would not have impacted your jurisdiction and review authority, but we also didn't think it was extremely likely that anybody was going to pursue that in the historic district, and in the interest of getting the ordinance through and done and set, we decided that was just the way to go. And that being said, I'd like to note it's 10 of 7. I do need some time between now and 7 o'clock to shut this meeting down, start the new meeting up, and take care of some things before that meeting.
Thank you, Brian. And I think that our old business, basically, we can defer to the next meeting. There's really very, very little to say about all of these things. Please, though, item D, 6D, the project awards, think about what would be great awards to give. We're not really providing much advisory opinions, but we may in the future for town projects and for other projects. And we're not doing much with the revolving fund research at the moment. So I think that can all be deferred. Thank you very much.
Quick comment about D, just because I'm so bad at this, but I want to say I did see that Stedman's Bicycle has taken over County Auto, and I think it's worth taking a look at that. It might be a worthy project. I didn't look carefully enough, and I will, but if you happen to be driving by, it looks like
a
it might
good
be
project.
something- Yeah, might be something to consider.
There's a little blue cottage now on Columbia Street nearby that was a Gothic cottage that could have been totally ruined and wasn't. So
Yep.
Oh, that's another
to look
one.
at.
That's another good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. I think we should adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion that.
All right.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Brian, so much. Thank you, Andrew. I know you're hanging in there. And Shanti and Linda and Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich.
Trying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody.
Bye, Brian.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you
Stay
guys.
safe. Stay safe.
Yeah, stay
everybody.
safe. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.